Thank you. Right, everybody, welcome to the Tynedale LAC on Tuesday the 14th of September. Just a bit of information, please. Can all members make sure they keep their microphones muted unless they're invited to speak? And the meeting is being shown on the YouTube Northumberland TV channel. Okay, we go straight to item 2, which is apologies for absence. I don't think there is any, Nicola, is there?
There's not. All members are present, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of July and the 10th of August 21, to be confirmed as a true record. I think I've noted what you're going to say. I've spotted it already, but are you going to say that your mentions in apologies for absence? Yes, I'll let Nicola know. Come on, go. Right, on the minutes from meeting Tuesday, 13th of July, there's no record of Councillor Homer being apologies for absence, which I know she did because I put them in. Any other points? Right, okay. Thank you very much. In which case we'll go to item 4, which is disclosure of members' interests. Councillor Riddle.
Of advance as it relates to the development that they have. Have you got a microphone, John? Have you got a microphone?
I understand that, Councillor Riddle.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to Councillor Scott, who's the Vice Chair Planning.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just go through the planning procedure. As Chair, I will introduce the planning application. I will ask the planning officer to present the report and update us on any changes to recommendations. We will then go to public speaking. Objectors will get 5 minutes. This will be split if there's more than one objector. Local councillors or parish councillors will also have 5 minutes, which will be split. And the applicant or the supporter will also have 5 minutes. This will also be split between how many people are here today. No questions allowed to or by any public speakers. We will then go to members' questions to planning officers. Then we will need a proposer, a seconder before we go to a debate. Then we'll be able to vote on the application. Agenda item 6, 20/0421/FUL, installation of 20 kilovolt standard distribution substation and associated access arrangements in conjunction with existing planning approvals, primarily 16/4/04680/OUT and 19/02033/RAM to allow removal of current poles and overhead power lines, land north east of Bridgeford View, Bellingham, Northumberland. So I'll go to Callum to update us on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just before getting into the presentation, I do have a quick update for members. So there is an omission in the officer report. So beneath paragraph 7.11 in the report, there should be an additional paragraph. And I'll just read that out for you guys now. So the impact of potential noise from the development and the amenity of neighbours of the neighbouring properties has been considered due to the proximity of the station next to the existing and proposed dwellings. So Public Health Protection have been consulted and they have no objections to the proposed development, and it is not considered that the neighbouring amenity would be significantly impacted by the development in terms of light, outlook or noise, in accordance with the Tynedale District Local Plan Policies GD2 and CS22 and the MPPF. So let's go into the presentation now. So this is the site location, just on the northeast corner of Bellingham. And that's the proposed site plan, just showing the actual plant itself and the access and the hard standing next to it. And these are the elevations of the substation and the floor plans. And these are some site photographs. So this shows where the substation will be located. And again, and just showing the proximity of the houses to the south. And also views across the site to the north and the northeast where the previously approved dwellings will be located. Right, yeah. So officers are mindful of the concerns that have been raised by neighbouring residents and by the parish council, and these have been carefully taken into consideration. Set out in the officer report, the proposal will not have an adverse impact on highway safety or on protected species or their habitat. The proposal will also not lead to an increase in flood risk within the site or elsewhere, whilst the appearance of the substation will not have an adverse impact on the character or appearance of the street scene. Therefore, officers recommend that members grant planning permission subject to the conditions at the bottom of the officer report. Thanks.
Thank you, Callum. So we'll now go to, I'll hand over to Philip Chard on behalf of Paul Bell. You'll have 5 minutes. Okay?
Hello there. The proposed access is in an unsafe location. Highways has proposed a condition requiring the applicant to ensure the requisite visibility display, which we believe cannot be achieved, making it an unenforceable condition. Highways has based its decision on only on planning documents reviewed. There is no reference to any site visits having taken place. All of the documents submitted and stated as having been reviewed are only two-dimensional. Visibility needs to be considered in both the horizontal and the vertical plane. We're not aware of any councillor visits to the site either. The proposed substation lies significantly below the level of the carriageway, so the access will inevitably be sloping, adversely affecting visibility. There is a significant downward dip in the road forming a crest, which compromises visibility of the proposed access down towards and up from the village. This whole section of road is on a steep hill, with increased stopping distances, especially in adverse weather and road conditions, and especially for HGV, farm vehicles, wagons, quarry lorries, for which this is the principal route to the A68 and onwards north and south. Even if the proposed visibility display were to be considered achievable, it would require the removal of one remaining tree, which has been pledged to retain within the tree protection plan itself the subject of planning conditions. There are 2 other vehicular entrances in that immediate area, plus the new footpath to the recently enlarged development of holiday homes, plus a proposed new roadside footpath as part of this development, all risking distraction and requiring specific attention from drivers, as does the kink in the road and the steepness of the hill. There's a lot going on this spot. Speeding is a known issue on the section of road, and there is physical evidence of vehicles having to take evasive action with tyre marks on curbs and grass verges. Cars and lorries mount the pavement at that location. For all of the above reasons, this location as a point of access was not considered suitable by the applicant at outline stage. Nothing has changed. Why should it be suitable now? Many of the issues above have been highlighted by other local people who are familiar with the road, including the members of the parish council who have also raised objections. A much safer access has been proposed from within the development, with an internal street only 2.5 metres away from the proposed substation compound. Why has this option not been evaluated by the applicant and selected as the safest option? Safety issues should not be disregarded or be subject to unsubstantiated and unwarranted compromise. It is the duty and responsibility of councillors to satisfy themselves that this proposed access is safe. If they cannot do so, the application should be refused. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Robert Murphy. There you go.
Afternoon, everyone. Due to the nature of this application, I didn't want to speak for too long, but I did think it might be useful to sort of set out a few key points for thinking about. Obviously, the proposal relates directly to the approved housing development on the wider site, and as part of this, it allows for the removal of the existing overhead power lines and cables. Now, as you would expect with such a feature, it's a fairly standard prefabricated design, but it is worth noting that the council proposed to apply a condition requiring the colour specification to be agreed in advance. Also, just picking up on the comments made by Mr. Chard there, obviously we did give consideration to putting an access further into the site, but actually it's a requirement of Northern Power Grid that the access comes from the main road for maintenance purposes, so they're not having to travel into the site, they've got their own access. It's also worth noting that the substation is to be drained via the wider system for the housing development, and that the proposal has been agreed with the LLFA. I hope these clarifications assist members in coming to a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to members' questions to planning officers. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may just ask two straightforward questions. One, I know from the report that the substation is now required for the new houses. Would you not have expected this application to come at the same time as the houses were done as per the original plan application? It seems strange now that it's coming after the approval of the houses has been given. And obviously, at the end of the day, if we don't grant permission, obviously, I presume these houses are going to have trouble with the electric supply. That is one sort of question which I have. And the second question, Bellingham Parish Council's comments, they're saying that access to the substation is not accurate because it's coming through nearby residents' gardens. I couldn't see on the plan if that was true or not. So I'm just asking if that is true what Bellingham Parish Council is saying, because they're objecting this application.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Just to answer your first question there, it's common in both ways for either the substation to come in as part of a wider development. We quite often see those type of applications, but it's not uncommon for them to come in separately depending on the needs of the development as they go forward. So it's not inappropriate for them to do so. No, it's not unusual, sorry. As far as your second question, the PC have questioned the access coming through an existing housing estate, but actually it's really clear from the plans it's definitely coming from Pennine Way. You can see from the location plan there that is up on the TV that it definitely is. So just to answer that question, it absolutely is coming from the main road, which has been clarified obviously by the speaker today, saying that that is a requirement of the electricity network, that they have to have their own access from the main highway.
Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, could I just ask for a little bit of explanation or comment on the point that the objector made about the sort of the gradient of the road and the potential sort of safety aspects of the access. I mean, it's quite clear in the report that the Highways Department don't see that as a problem, but you know, is there any sort of further detail on that?
Actually, our highways officers are here today, so I'll ask them to respond. It's okay.
See you all right now.
An officer from the team has actually been out on site to have a look and assessed it through the normal process of ensuring it is safe and correct, and it actually adheres to the necessary visibility displays that we have. And they've checked all that out actually on site to make sure it adheres to the standards.
Councillor Sesford.
Michael, if I could just a little bit extra onto Councillor Oliver's question there. What's the speed along that road? Speed limit, I should say.
I believe the speed limit's 30 miles an hour down that road. It actually changes further up the hill.
Right, okay. And was any consideration given to maybe putting speed deterrent in there to make sure that they didn't fly along that road as being reported by the resident?
All that was considered in the original application when the whole development came on board, and all the speed and everything was checked out at that time, and it was felt that there wasn't necessary.
Did we do speed strips to
all that was all the transport statement and everything was done with the full application, yeah.
Okay, and can I just ask one more question, not to you, Michael, you'll be pleased to hear. There's a report about the problems that could happen with flooding. I don't know who wants to take that question. I don't. Do you want to take it?
Yes, I will. So obviously that's been raised as part of the consultation process, the representations received, and I don't know if you will all remember when the application came beforehand, there was a lot of discussion about the potential flooding on site, drainage, and particularly regarding an off-site culvert. We have consulted with the LLFA on this particular application. This is actually a full application standalone, and it's technically not to do with the other applications for outline and reserve matters. However, it is covering the same site. So we've consulted with the LLFA, and they are happy that this development will have no further impact on flooding, and that the application for the entire site and through the discharge of those conditions will cover it. But what they're asking actually as a point of note is that the conditions relating to the drainage on the site obviously didn't include the substation when they were done, so we'll ask them to resubmit that information to make sure that that's covered as part of the wider site. Does that answer your question?
I'd answer my question, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Do we have a proposal for this application?
Stimulate debate. I'll propose the officer recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Horncastle? So we can open the debate. Councillor Stewart.
And the issue of flooding was highlighted, and also the sharp bend and the speeding there. Are we, what I've heard today from the questions posed and the answers given by the officers, we appear to have reassurance that this addition to the planning for the main housing site will not impact upon the flooding, and we'll be looking again at that. Also, it's been questioned about the speed limits, and if it hasn't actually taken place now, I believe there will be action taken to reduce the speed as far as practicable in the near future. So on that one, I think the questions which have been raised by the public and by councillors here today, we've had reassurance from the officers.
Anybody else? So we'll go to the vote. I'll ask Melanie exactly what we're voting for today on this application.
Thank you, Chair. It's, the proposal is that the application is granted in accordance with the officer recommendation, which is granted permission subject to the planning conditions in the report, and that's for the installation of the substation and associated access arrangements, etc.
So can we have a show of hands who's in support of this application? Unanimous. Agenda item 7.
I think, Chair, if I can just, sorry, I don't know why I'm standing up there. I think we need to get Councillor Riddle back.
Agenda item 7. 21/01/206/FUL. Proposed garage conversion to holiday let with 1 bedroom, bathroom, living area and kitchen. Riding Dean House, Riding Dean, Mickley, Stocksfield, Northumberland, NE 43 7BL. And I believe we'll have a public speaker here, an objector, Adrian Lamb. Sorry, just a minute. We'll go to Callum for an update on the planning application.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So there's no updates for members following the publication of the report, so I'll just go straight into the presentation. Yeah, so the proposal is to convert a existing detached garage into a 1-bedroom holiday let unit. So this is an aerial photograph just showing where the site is in relation to the rest of Mickley. And a more zoomed in photograph. So as a handy reference, we've got a paddling pool there on the drive. So the building subject to the conversion is just to the south of the paddling pool. Members need to be mindful of the cul-de-sac just to the north and also the proximity of the dwellings just to the west. So these are the existing and proposed site plans, which also show the floor plans. So the existing plans on the left, it shows a double garage and a gym to the rear of it. And the proposal seeks to retain one of the car parking bays in the garage and create a bedroom, ensuite bathroom and kitchen diner with a small patio area just to the rear. And there'll be the provision of an extra car parking bay just within the drive adjacent to the house. So these are the existing and proposed elevations. So existing along the top, existing to the left and proposed to the right. And these are the south and west elevations. So the key elevation to look at are the two along the bottom. So it shows that there's 2 existing windows on this elevation, and it also shows the difference in site levels between the application site and the levels of the garden to the west. So when looking at this building from the neighbour's garden, it actually appears to be quite a large structure. So we'll just go to the photographs and I'll show that. So these are photos taken from Bewick Garth to the north, just showing the existing access arrangement for the property and also looking further down the street. So you can see that there is already some on-street car parking from the neighbouring properties. And this is another view of the site from the northwest looking at it. So the building subject to the conversion is just in the background there. And these are the photographs taken from the southwest, from the back lane, just looking at the building. So this is an unusual existing building, which has been highlighted in the officer report, in that we do have these 2 existing openings on this elevation. So officers and members need to be mindful of those 2 existing openings. There have been some concerns raised by the neighbour in relation to the proximity of the windows to their rear garden. And just the left photograph there on the left edge, you can just see the rear elevation of the neighbouring property. So just to get an idea of the relationship between the garage and that neighbouring property. And these are some more photographs taken from the neighbour's garden. So again, just showing the scale of the building and also the existing openings. So the reason this application has been brought to this committee is because of the amount of objections that we've received, and officers are mindful of the concerns that have been raised by the neighbouring residents, and these have been carefully taken into consideration by officers. As set out in the officer report, the amount of car parking provision within the application site is considered to be acceptable, and whilst in this particular instance the windows on the western elevation of the building are considered acceptable because of the existing ones. Subject to the use of obscured glazing and subject to these windows being fixed shut, so it's recommended that these measures are secured by a planning condition. Officers therefore consider the application to be acceptable, and we recommend that members grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out at the bottom of the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. So we'll now go to public speaking, and we'll have Adrian Lamb, who will have 5 minutes. Adrian, okay?
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name's Adrian Lamb and I live at 8 Buick Garth, which is next door to the proposed development. Although we have numerous concerns, in the interest of keeping this short, I'll focus on the most pressing points. The most important is the residential amenity. The western garage wall, which you can see there, forms the boundary wall of our garden and faces directly to the rear of our home. And there are these 2 large windows, which are 6 foot by 5 foot. Since we moved in here 5 years ago, the visible activity has been very limited in the right-hand window, which I now know as the gym, and I've only ever seen this used once. So currently, activity, noise and disruption is minimal to none. My wife and I both work from home, and our free time is limited by my wife's disability, and we therefore spend most of our free time in our home and garden. In the report under the residential amenity section, there are numerous opinions which I disagree with, principally that there would not be any significant or unacceptable level of noise or activity that would affect our amenity, and that the garage gym is described as a residential building. Given that it's very rarely used now and nobody actually lives in there, and I would anticipate this to be let out as much as possible, I would expect there would be a considerable increase in noise and activity, and this would have a hugely negative and unacceptable impact on our privacy and peace and quiet in our home and garden and working environments. Any noise from within here would be audible to us, and despite frosted glass, any activity inside will be visible, particularly at night when our lights are on inside. On the section on the Human Rights Act, it says that there shall be a respect for an individual's private life and home, save for that interference which is in the interest of public safety and the economic well-being of the country. This application is not either of those, and I believe that our rights to a private life and home are not being respected by this proposal, and that our protections under the Human Rights Act will be interfered with, and I disagree with the opinions in this report. Having said that, because we live on the side of the side of the property, other than these big windows, I have little objection to this property. It will have much less impact on us than other windows, and I suggested to our neighbours that they removed these windows and re-rendered that wall, and that I would have no objection to this. I felt that these were reasonable proposals and were being considered, however, they seem to have just been ignored. Numerous other neighbours have objected. 5 of the 7 properties which are opposite Riding Dean have objected, as have an additional 4 properties in the immediate vicinity. There will be an increase in noise and activities from cars and people coming and going, which will have a negative effect on the amenity of people living close by. The parking proposals appear to be unworkable, and the cars will need to be shuffled around to enable the car for the holiday let to enter and exit. And this will almost certainly have to reverse out the gate and turn around at the street. The plans also have a gate at the rear of the property through the hedge, and this is only a few metres away from the old people bungalows at the back. And some of these people have also objected, saying that they feel that their privacy and safety will be jeopardised, and they don't want strangers coming and going so close to their home. Almost every property adjacent and 9 of the other 12 properties on Buick Garth have repeatedly objected to this proposal, as have other people living close by, and there has been very little support for it. I'm struggling to understand how this is still being considered when so many people object to it. The proposal is solely for the financial benefit of the applicants, but to the detriment of everybody else who lives close by, particularly me and my wife. I'm glad that the report has stated the building can only ever be used as a holiday let, as the application has told me she may use this as a granny flat and told other neighbours it may be an independent living space for grown children. This would have an even greater impact on our amenity, as it would then be a permanent residence, possibly by a teenage boy. This is from one of our neighbours as well, who states, I'm at a loss both in terms of honesty and integrity of the individuals why they should choose to tell different neighbours different accounts on the change of use of the building. However, I now see it as a holiday let, not a granny flat for a loved relative. There appears to be little moral concern for the neighbours or the impact this planning process has had on individuals' health or mental well-being, despite the fact the majority of the people are elderly and some fall within the Disability Rights Act. The planning application process and revised plans have been divisive.
Thank you,
Is that my time?
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. So we'll now go to members' questions to planning officers. Councillor Cessford.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a few questions, if you don't mind, here. Having a look at these plans, there seems to be quite a few windows, apart from the existing, oh no, they've got windows on every side, I beg your pardon, or light coming on every side. And it seems to me that one of the gentleman's objections is the fact that at the moment you've got something that's not being used very often, and it has got 2 very large windows, and if that's obscured glazing, it doesn't seem to obscure much, because you can see what's inside the other side of the window quite clearly. The gentleman says, why do we block these off? Well, you know, that would give a lack of reduction of light in there, but, you know, it's a flat roof. What about roof lights? Have they been considered?
Yeah, so it's not an ideal situation, this, in that there are existing windows on that elevation. So I can totally understand why concerns have been raised by the neighbouring residents, particularly in terms of overlooking from these proposed windows. But at the end of the day, they are there, and it's an important material consideration that the windows are there. The applicants can do a number of things within that building without needing plan permission from ourselves as the council. So there is already that existing impact. What officers have done is we've taken a look at the proposed use, and this is an opportunity to impose a condition which would require what would be a higher sort of standard of glazing, obscured glazing. So the condition specifically requires the use of obscured glazing at Pilkington level 3 or higher. I appreciate that's a technical term, but it is more obscured than the level that's in there now. So as part of the proposal, before they brought the building into use, they would need to put in higher level obscured glazing.
I understand the fact that it's already got existing windows in, but it's a change of use column. So does that not allow you to make other conditions similar to what I've just suggested? For instance, you know, these roof light shafts that you see in people's roofs nowadays are very effective. You know, they're not just the roll of silver foil that used to be 10, 15 years ago or something. And that would cure a lot of problems. You get adequate lighting in, and you wouldn't get people looking outside. And it's not that they haven't got a lot of windows in that that building, which they have. So it's not going to be like sitting in a cave or something like that. It's still going to have lots of access. And besides which, you know, they probably have no desire to look out at somebody sitting in the garden either. I'm on about people who hire the premises. And I might as well combine that with the other point I was going to make, just to clarify that permanent residence is not allowed, is it?
Yeah, so just in terms of the first question, if officers are of the view that the proposed opening arrangement was wholly unacceptable, then in which case officers might then insist that the applicant remove the windows. But the reason that officers are recommending approval is because we think that, subject to the mitigation measures secured by the condition, we think it would not be unacceptable on the amenity of the neighbours. I appreciate that's a matter of judgment. The neighbouring residents may disagree with that, but officers are recommending approval, and we feel as if it's not necessary to block the openings up. You know, members can of course take a different view, but officers feel as if the scheme as currently presented, subject to the mitigation measures, is not unacceptable. So I appreciate that the proposed use is different to the existing use, but they are going to be remarkably similar in terms of intensity and the number of people going to be using it. So again, just to go back to what I said earlier, there's quite a lot of scope that the applicant can do with that existing building without needing planning permission from us as the council. The only reason they actually need permission is because they're changing the use of the building, but you can already do quite a bit in there because it's an outbuilding. So they could rearrange the internal walls, they could take the parking bays out if they really wanted to. There's quite a lot they could already do with the existing building.
Yeah, I just finish off with the is it therefore possible or not possible for us to put a condition on along the lines I've just suggested?
To what effect? To take the windows out?
I suggested roof lights, but of course, that's not to me to tell you what to use, but...
Councillor Sesswood, just to clarify, if members were minded that they didn't consider what's in front of us to be acceptable, I do take your point. You know, what Callum's saying is valid, that they could use it for all sorts of other reasons, and it's our recommendation that the obscure glazing is sufficient on balance of those judgments. But if members, it is served by two other windows on the outer elevation, so you can see there's a set of patio doors and what appears to be a window above the kitchen sink. So it would be served by, that room would be served by other openings. If members decided that they didn't find this acceptable and they wanted that window blocked up, what I would suggest is that you were minded to grant subject to receipt of amended plans showing that, rather than a condition requesting it to do so. And then once we had those, we would be in a position to...
Thank you very much.
Just to answer the additional question as well, yes, the proposed use would be tied down as holiday accommodation. Yeah.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you. Can I just go on about the numbers? You said it's gone up to 3. Can I just ask, is that double glazing?
Not necessarily. So the Pilkington level is like a scale which measures the degree of how obscured it is.
How?
Of how obscured it is. So basically how much you can see through the window. So I'll just get the side photos back up. So that isn't quite level 3. So I've seen level 3 windows on a site that I'd done in Ponteland a few years ago now, and it is a heavier level of glazing.
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't agree with Councillor Sesswood, I'm just asking other questions. The point being is that it's not just about seeing through, it's the noise as well. And it is people's gardens. So what I'm asking you is, can you do a level 3 double glazing? I don't know, I have no idea, but I mean, obviously the building people would know that. Whether you can do that?
If members felt it was necessary, we can amend the wording of the condition to specifically require double glazing. if members wished. Yeah, it could be done.
Double glazing and frosted.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, so I'm not so discounting Councillor Sestford's view, I'm just asking what other issues we have. Thank you for that one. Can I ask you, the other one is just about the car parking. Is that, Michael, is that yours?
It can be. What's the question?
So I can't see you, Dale. Right, can you tell me if the gate opens inwards or outwards, please?
Personally, I haven't been on site, so I wouldn't be able to tell you whether it opens in or out. Really, it should be opening away from the highway, but I can't say whether it's... personally, I haven't been out there. Another officer from the team has.
Right, Callum, can you remember? I actually think I do know.
So, judging by my photographs, which are on the screen, they open inward into the curtilage of the property.
So is that being taken into consideration when you're talking about the parking spaces available?
Yes. So, yeah, there would be sufficient room to park along the front of the building there. So even if the gates were open, or even if the gates had the swing open, there's enough room there. Yeah.
Can I just say, I mean, if you go down that street, it's blocked with cars all the time from residents because of the car parking issues down there anyway, enormous amount of car parking issues down there. So the last thing, obviously what I'm saying is that you need to be absolutely exact sure that all the cars can get in with the gate obviously being closed behind it, but also if there's any manoeuvring, that it isn't onto the street, because actually manoeuvring onto the street is not possible or practical because the road is narrow and there's no car parking spaces. So it is, you know, that is an issue, and I can understand the residents actually bringing that up.
I mean,
so I would need to really know that was absolutely the point. I mean, if somebody comes with a caravan, for instance, I don't know what conditioning would be put on that one, but that would just that would stop everything altogether, no doubt. But it is a small space, the size of cars, etc. But it is this gate opening, and I think the highway outside actually belongs to the county council, and you can't have gate opening onto the highway. So that's something we'd like to consider. I would like to see considered.
Yeah, and Callum has been out on site as he's confirmed that the gates open in over. We're still satisfied there's sufficient space within the actual site for the vehicles to manoeuvre and get out in a forward gear. And there's 4 parking spaces in there, so therefore there'll be no parking on the highway from this development. And we've got a condition to secure that parking for amenities retained.
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, basically officers have looked at it and we are of the view that there is sufficient space within the red line boundary for the 4 car parking bays and manoeuvring room. Yeah.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was also on double glazing, actually, but it would be nice to have had a sample of Pilkington 3 glass just to know exactly what it looks like. You're asking us to approve a recommendation of approve without actually knowing what it really looks like. So it's a bit of a tricky thing to do, to accept something without knowing.
Well, just for clarity there, Councillor Hutchinson, the Pilkington level goes from 1 to 5, so that gives you a bit of an idea of how see-through it is. So number 3 is somewhere in the middle. You could increase your request to be at level 5 if you wanted the most obscure you could do. So it's as if you would, if you were trying to look through your own bathroom window, it means that the pattern is thicker and you can see less through it. But basically, that number 3 is a mid-range, but not the highest.
Right, thanks. Another question was distance from the neighbouring property. Approximate distance.
I don't know off the top of my head. And I don't have a scale plan with me to measure it out.
Are you asking for the property that the windows overlook?
Yeah, well, change the question, make it easier for you, actually. Are there any windows that are overlooking from either side to neighbouring property?
Callum's got a picture of those windows. You can see the neighbouring property just in the background. Yeah. And there was another one, wasn't there, where you had it just...
And that one?
That one.
On that one, on the left-hand side, presumably the nearest window, the window you can see. No. One before that? That one. Picture on the left. The window you can see, judging by the plans, would be the nearest window, because the house appears to be on an angle to the garage.
Sorry, what was the question? Or was it just an observation, really?
Is the distance acceptable between the two buildings?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Riddle.
Yes, my questions relate to loss of amenity and privacy as well. You know, it says on the plan that the windows are to be sealed. Are you expecting the windows to remain the same and just be reglazed in Pilkington, whatever, level 3 glass for obscurity? And if so, what is in the conditions to ensure that that remains in perpetuity and that the applicant doesn't just change it back to either opening, because it's quite a small property and you might want ventilation, or to remove the obscure glass at a later date?
Yeah, so the matter of the openings remaining fixed shut, when this scheme originally came in, the applicant had sought to include a fire escape window on this elevation, which was highlighted by members of the public. So officers have went back to the applicant and asked for them to put the fire escape window on a different elevation, which they have now done. And, you know, just in the interest of the amenity of that neighbour, officers have recommended that the openings do remain fixed shut. So it's condition 6 on the report. In the last paragraph, the last sentence before you get to the reason, it requires those measures to remain in place during the lifetime of the development. So the measures do need to be installed and maintained thereafter. So it's effectively like an indefinite compliance condition whilst the development's being used. Yeah.
I understand, thank you, but I'm dubious.
Well, if it is a compliance condition, it can be enforced if there was a situation where the occupier of the development installed a window which did open. I imagine the neighbours would spot that, and the planning enforcement team could investigate. Yeah.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Got a question about the requirement for solar panels. In paragraph 7.37, it says, given the scale and nature of the development, a requirement to provide micro-renewable energy sources such as solar panels is not necessary. I was just wondering, is that consistent with the County Council's declaration of a climate emergency and its stated intent to reach net zero by 2030? And in particular, is it consistent with policy EN1 of Tynedale Core Strategy, which looks to minimise energy use and promote the development of micro-renewable energy generation? So in other words, why aren't we insisting on solar panels?
Councillor Murphy, I'll just jump in there. Obviously, it was discussed at the committee before. When we're talking about the proposed core strategy, we don't have that document in place yet. It's not adopted, so we can only give it limited weight in terms of how much we can ask applicants to do. In this particular case, what the case officer is saying is that it's quite a small scale development and it's an existing building, so it is much harder for us to insist on sort of post-building measures to retrofit things to this building, which is already existing. It's much easier for us to try and implement things where they're a new building and they can incorporate those measures more easily. So in effect, what we're saying is we don't really have the tools to ask for that or the policy background to back it up, but it is definitely something that we will be looking towards when we're in the phase of that adopted plan where we can have more powers to insist on those energy measures being put in place.
So the Tynedale Core Strategy isn't that is low. That's not enough to require micro-renewable energy generation potential now.
Well, I'm not saying that we can't use them, but in this type of development, as I said, it's an existing building. It's difficult for us to insist on those things. Typically, this is with new build or larger scale schemes where there is more possibility to install those measures. If members really felt like they wanted us to insist on some, we could add a condition asking them to outline what those were, but it would be difficult for us to force them to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Dale.
Can I just go back to the original picture of the front of the garage, please? So, in fact, the garage, 2 doors, and there's just windows at the back. So at the present time, they're garages for cars. Basically, that's what they are. And maybe they've got a cycle in it or whatever. But it is they're both garages at the moment. So it's actually a change of use from garage to tourist accommodation.
Yeah, so that's what's set out in the description of the proposal.
Yeah. Thank you. Just wanted to...
Councillor Stewart.
Very quick, Callum. Why level 3, not higher?
If members wanted to go higher, if they felt it was necessary, you can do. So level 5, I've not actually seen level 5 in person, but I imagine it would obscure pretty much any natural light going in. But if members do want to go higher, you can do, yeah.
And it can be double glazing too, for instance?
Yes, and double glazed, yes.
Do we have a proposer for this application? Councillor Cessford.
I would like to propose the officer's recommendation, but with a condition, or whatever you call it, similar to the condition I said before, which I think that these windows should be blocked off. I'm not obviously going to make anything about roof lights and stuff, because that's up to them whether they want to put extra light into the building. But I think it's up to us to decide to obscure, now that it's going to be lived in, as opposed to just a temporary measure where people pop into the gym or whatever it is now. Could be lived in permanently. I think they need to be blocked up of some form. Now, my idea would be to blocked up. I wouldn't actually be too upset if somebody was to amend that to using Pilkington 5, but to be honest, I would imagine that's extremely expensive, and so bricking up would probably do just the exact same job, and so my proposal would be to block them off, sorry. And I don't know how to say that in legal technicality, so I'll put that to Melanie okay to sort out.
Might be a joint effort. So, Councillor Cessford, you are proposing the officer's recommendation. I would suggest, as Kate has indicated, it would need resubmission of approved plans.
Yes, I would suggest you would need to give delegated authority to the Director of Planning to approve, subject to the receipt of amended plans.
Yeah.
But what I would suggest is that you, amongst yourselves, decide whether or not you want it blocked up or whether you want to change the obscure glazing level. Obviously, the difference between the two is one is obviously much more permanent, and also it would stop any light coming through, which the obscure glazing wouldn't. But I'll leave that to you to decide which option you would rather, but I would suggest that we need to be specific with the applicant.
I understand what you're saying about the lack of light, less light coming in, but we've already said they've got openings of some form of other on every other wall that there, and another condition, of course, is they could put something on the roof. That's really up to them how they deal with that. If they're presented with the fact that they can't have those windows anymore, and my opinion is it's up to them how they deal with it.
I think
it's up to me to tell them how to deal with that.
I would also, just point out that obviously if we're discussing this window, it is only the window to the living room, which is part of the holiday let that you're talking about, and not the window that's still showing in the garage that's retained. Does that make sense? Callum, could you just put the floor plan up? So you can see there on the right hand side, the L shape of the new holiday let. The window that we're talking about is shown right next to where it says living room. So it's on the left of that. and that room is also served by those patio doors and another window. But the one garage space is to be retained, which also has a window in it. So we're only talking about the one in the holiday let. Is that correct?
I think if I can just, in respect of condition 6, it states, notwithstanding the received plans prior to occupation of the development, the openings on the western elevation of the building. So I think we need to be clear what we're talking about in respect of that.
Yeah.
I think also, Councillor Sassford, obviously if you are wanting, essentially, I think, you know, I'd want that you could term it blocking up the windows. I think it would be removal of the windows.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And then obviously condition 6 would be irrelevant, and that would need to be removed.
Yeah.
Can I second that, please? But can I just ask if I could make a slight amendment to that?
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with you about the blocking up opposite over the from the Liverpool. So I've turned it off. Sorry. I agree with you about the blocking up of that window. However, can the other window also, obviously it'll be level 3, but it still, can it be frosted and double glazed, please? So we've got 2 amendments, one to one window and another to another window.
Councillor Dale, the only issue that I have with that is that the garage is staying as it is, as a garage, and it's not changing. So the reason why we're asking for the other window to be changed is because it's becoming a habitable room as part of the holiday let, which the other window isn't. So I think that that could be perceived as being unreasonable.
The only difference was you're going to bring it, was going to be taken to level 3, weren't they, Callum? Is that right? Both of the windows. Yes. All I'm asking is to be double glazed, because I think that actually gives more, you know, if visitors are coming and going, people are actually in the garden underneath. So it would be, it's so easy just to make it double glazed. Then it,
Yeah, so we can do both openings double glazed
thank
anyways.
you very much.
Yeah.
I mean, just the one. One obviously is what Councillor Sassford was mentioning about blocking up. The other one will be double glazed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you wish to retain condition 6, but only to refer to the garage window, and you want it to be double glazed and obscurely glazed to level 3 or higher?
Level 3, but keeping the Councillor Sassford's original one for the...
That's fine, yep. So what I'm trying to say is we'll need to retain that condition as per the approval, but alter it to just that one window. And then we'll have to also delegate authority to the director to approve, subject to that condition, that amended condition, and amended plan showing the removal of the second window. Right.
I think if we can just have a second just to write something out, just to bear with us.
Thank you. Can I ask another question of the planning officers, Chairman? It's a comment and some clarification, really. I mean, conditions have to meet certain criteria, and in my mind, there's 3 main ones. That is that they've got to be necessary, enforceable, necessary, enforceable and reasonable. And the other thing that's slightly worrying me at the moment is that we've got a planning application in front of us and that we are more or less changing it by saying that a window's got to be blocked up. Is that defensible if it went to appeal?
Yeah, I can take that. I was literally just thinking that thought process while we had a quick pause there. So, to be honest, this was an on-balance recommendation. It's not an ideal situation having the existing windows there, but officers have had to work with the existing circumstances. I feel as if, so, you know, it is within your gift as members of this committee to disagree with the recommendation and impose different conditions if you feel more comfortable in approving the application. I think if you were to impose what would be a more onerous restriction, I think that could be justified as well. If it got to the situation where permission was granted with the amended condition, the applicant took it to appeal, arguing that the condition didn't meet the 6 tests in the MPPF, I think there's reasonable grounds for officers to defend that more onerous condition as well. It's an interesting one, but yeah, it's a good query to raise though, yeah.
Councillor Horncastle.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. If you don't mind me saying, this is rather unusual. We're getting into very dangerous territory here. It's not up to the committee to start altering the design of the application. You're supposed to look at what's in front of us. If the committee doesn't like it, refuse it. What next? You're going to have it a foot less in length and width. It's not up to us to alter the application. The application's in front of us. You've got the condition 6, but you can't come on, the committee start altering the design of the application. It's dangerous ground. Just, if you don't like it, refuse it. I mean, I can tell this is a small application. You've got 2 senior officers who are in chin-wagging with each other, quite rightly, because you know yourself this is a rather unusual situation. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. If you don't like it, refuse it.
So just to come back on that one, Councillor Hutchinson, it is unusual, and it's particularly unusual where there's an existing opening that we're asking them to block up. It is quite common for us to ask them to add things and alter things of something that's new, but where it's an existing building, it is quite unusual. But it is within the power of the committee to ask for an amended plan for something that they want to see done. And if the applicant doesn't wish to do so, they can refuse to do that, and then it will come back to the committee.
Can we carry on?
Yeah, I mean, as Kate says, you know, if this doesn't come to fruition, it would have to come back to committee anyway. So I think what Councillor Sessford's proposal is essentially minded to approve the application subject to conditions in the report, with condition 6 to be amended, only to refer to the garage window, with that window to be double glazed, with the exact wording to be delegated to the Director of Planning, and it's already got the Pilkington obscure glazing reference.
Oh, sorry. I think I asked for it to be frosted as well.
That's what obscure glazing is. It's
so I couldn't. So
that's what the obscure glazing is. It's the same thing as frosting.
is it right? Fine, that's right. I couldn't hear that. Sorry.
And subject to the receipt and approval of amended plans to show the removal of the window to the proposed living area. And is that what you wanted, Councillor Sessford?
That sounds about what I was saying.
And that's seconded by Councillor Dale.
So we'll move on to a debate.
Do we agree at the amendment first?
I've just read it out.
Do we agree the amendment first? Sorry.
Sorry, I've read it out. Councillor Sessford said that was what he wanted, and I asked you if you were happy to second that, and you said yes. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
You sure?
So we'll go on to the debate. Councillor Morfitt.
Thank you. I disagree with the planning officers that the site is considered to be a sustainable location because it's not accessible easily by bike. The emerging Northumberland local plan states that planning decisions will facilitate the potential for Northumberland to be a destination for cycling and walking holidays. But you can't take bikes on the number 10 bus, which serves the village. And the hill up from the Proto railway station is steep, and as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have a protected cycle path. So it's dangerous and unpleasant to cycle up. So in order for this planning application to contribute to making Mickley a more sustainable destination, I'm just wondering if it'd be possible to condition or at least encourage the applicants to offer to pick holiday makers up from the train station and to provide transport for their bikes.
Councillor Hutchinson.
I've got a tendency to agree with Councillor Horncastle, who's named as Councillor Hutchinson, and unfortunately, Kate, I'm the better looking one. I'll let you off. But I tend to agree with Councillor Horncastle. If it isn't what... we've got to look at what's in front of us. I should be looking what's in front of us. And if we agree with it, policy-wise, everything else, we agree with it. If not, we refuse it. The applicant appeals against it, against our decision. Having said that, you're saying with these conditions put on that Councillor Sessford proposed, if this were to be approved, the applicant could appeal against the condition, these different conditions, extra conditions.
Just to clarify, what we're saying is we'll alter condition 6 to make sure that the one window has to be changed to double glazed and what have you, but we're going to ask for amended plans before we take a decision. Have amended plans in front of us showing the blocking up of that window, and that will be the approved plan. If the applicant determined that actually they didn't want to do that, they can just agree that, and it would have to come back to committee. So it's not a condition that they could appeal. It's we're asking for a set of plans, and if they don't want to provide them, which is absolutely their right, it comes back to committee, and you would then take a decision if you wanted to refuse.
Right. It's a strange one. I haven't come across this before as Councillor Horncastle, but I understand where you're coming from. Thanks.
Happy.
So, Melanie, can you just clarify exactly what we're voting for today?
Councillor Sessford's proposal is that the application, that the application is minded to approve the application subject to conditions in the report, with the amendment of condition 6 to be amended to only refer to the garage window, which is to also be double glazed, with the exact wording of that condition to be delegated to the Director of Planning, and subject to the receipt and approval of amended plans to show the removal of the window to the proposed living area, along with the other conditions in the report.
So can I have a show of hands who is in support of what Melanie has just explained? Against? Abstentions?
So that's why I voted against it. This was very unusual to me, very new to me, and I didn't feel comfortable.
Likewise, Chair, that's exactly my sentiment as well.
I think I've only got 12 votes recorded, but there are 13 members. Is that correct?
Abstention there.
All right. I've got 2 abstentions. No. 1 abstention. 2 against and 9 for. Sorry, that's 12, so there's 13 members here.
That was probably not as high as you would have seen normally.
Is that for?
For the...
4. Can I just ask for 4 again? Those in favour if the... That is 10. Sorry, I think I possibly missed Councillor Sharp. Right. That's 10 for, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Councillor Murphy?
I'd quite like to say that I abstained because I wanted to support the application, but I wasn't in favour of the window being removed, and I had hoped to be able to vote against that amendment and then go on to vote in favour of the application, but didn't see that that was possible, so I abstained.
Okay.
Can I just add, next time when we have a parking, I'm sorry, Michael, it's no judgment on you, but next time we have something which is obviously a very difficult decision to be taken on car parking, etc. Can we make sure, I don't know if anybody went on the site who was a highway thing, can we make sure that they're here? Because it is a difficult one, and I actually understand what the residents are talking about. I just hope it works, because we'll be straight down your back, or the county council's back if it doesn't, in one way or the other. But actually, could somebody, again, if it's a highway thing, if they could come present, please?
So the planning application with the changes has been carried. Okay. So agenda item 8, 21/00473/FUL, proposed new build dwelling, land west of Tynedale Terrace, Wellbank, Corbridge, Northumberland. And I'll hand over to Callum for the presentation of the application.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just before getting into the presentation, there is a quick update for the recommendation. So it's just following a chat with colleagues in legal, just a technicality. The recommendation should read that members grant planning permission, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and the conditions listed at the bottom of the officer report. Right, so I'll get into the presentation. So we've got an aerial photograph showing Corbridge and just highlighting the location of the site in relation to the rest of the village. And this is a more zoomed in aerial photograph just showing the location of the site in relation to Wellbank and Watling Street off to the east. So members can just be mindful of the terraces to the west and to the east and just the size of those plots in relation to this site. So this is the site location plan that was submitted as part of the application. It just highlights the extent of the site in red and also the extent of land within the ownership of the applicant in blue. So the applicant does own the neighbouring property to the west. And these are the proposed site and floor plans. So the plan on the left just indicates how the roof would look and also the extent of the footprint of the building within the plot. We have a split level rear garden to the north and the provision of one car parking bay at the front to the south. The site plan also shows that the building would be set back from the street frontage as well. The floor plan just shows the internal arrangement and the provision of 2 bedrooms. So these are the existing and proposed elevations for the front and for the east side. So we've got existing on the bottom and proposed on top. So the existing plan just shows the gradient of Wellbank. and also just the height and the proximity of the neighbouring properties. And the proposed elevation on top just indicates how the development would appear, just in terms of the material palette, the colour, and the scale and positioning of openings. And then we've got the side elevation there on the right hand side. Members should note that that's how the development would appear when standing within the site. If you were standing on top of the retaining wall to the east, you would actually be looking down onto the roof. So this is the rear and the west side elevations. So the rear elevation on the left just indicates the split level rear garden. And then the west side elevation just shows how that side would appear. There is also a condition requiring the close boarded timber fence to be erected before the development is occupied, just to prevent overlooking from the rear garden of the proposed dwelling into next door. So these are some side photographs, just showing the approach from the east coming down Wellbank. So just to show the scale and the material palettes of the existing dwellings nearby. These are some photographs of the site itself. So we've got the existing dwelling at number 5 to the left, and then just sort of sweeping across to the right. We've got the difference in levels across the site, and also the height of the retaining wall to the east, and the dwellings above that. And these are some views from the top of the retaining wall to the east, looking down onto the site. And these are some photographs just showing the rear of the terrace as seen from the top of the retaining wall. Right, so we have received a few objections from neighbouring residents regarding this application. One of the main concerns that's been raised is the impact on the retaining wall during the works. So it's probably quite difficult to see from those photos. There's the retaining wall which forms the northern boundary, and the retaining wall which forms the eastern boundary. But as mentioned in the officer report, they aren't material planning considerations, so it's something that would be picked up by my colleagues in the building control team under building regulations. But if members have any queries about that, I'm more than happy to go through it. Concerns have also been raised in respect of highway safety, but officers have carefully considered that. And subject to conditions, we are of the view that the application is acceptable. Therefore, members are recommended to approve this application subject to the conditions at the bottom of the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
So we'll now go to public speaking. Mr Milburn, you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I'm going to need 5 minutes, but members, I just asked before I start that you give me a slightly easier time than the last application you considered. But first of all, thanks for giving me the opportunity to represent my client. The site has come forward after considerable discussion with the applicant and the council's officers over a significant number of months. In particular, the highways and building conservation officers who we've worked with to make the scheme acceptable. As a result of these discussions, the proposal would create a modestly contemporary 2-bedroom property that would be a positive addition within the street scene in Corbridge Village also. The proposal will be respectful of the local area and provides a design solution to an area of mixed residential character within conservation area that Corbridge sits within. The proposal would reflect the attractive construction methods of the conservation area and add to its character. In essence, the proposal aims to provide a new high-quality build combining the best in traditional building materials with modern building systems such as sedum, ensuring the building will remain an attractive addition in this area. The application, as the officers outlined, has received 3 objections from the neighbouring properties at Tyne View, which sits above the site. You can see on the right-hand photograph there. These objections are threefold. First of all, highways. Second, the impact on the retaining wall that serves as the party wall to the site. And finally, the appearance of the property, in particular the sedum roof and how it will look throughout the year. Of the first of these 3 matters raised, the highways concerns have been amended and parking is available, as well as suitable visibility displays up and down Wellbank, which has clearly got a significant gradient to it. with the officers concluding that the proposal is acceptable, subject to conditions as set out within the officers' report. In regard to the retaining wall, as again the officers said, and I can only repeat, this is a building control matter and is not a material consideration. Therefore, it cannot be given weight in the determination of the application. Finally, the appearance, and in particular the sedum roof. The sedum will be very much like a grass lawn. It'll vary in colour, green colours throughout the year as it as the moisture content, which is probably quite considerable at certain times here in Corbridge, fluctuates. And the overall design approach that has been taken has been supported from your building conservation officer, both at the pre-application stage and the application stage. As you can see, it is a contemporary approach with the use of flat roofs, but the materials are high quality and they are traditional. And it meets the stringent policies within the existing development plan and those of the MPPF. The officer didn't mention, but the Corbridge Parish Council have also objected to this application on the grounds of design, which they consider is not in keeping with the locality, and on the grounds of vehicular access and subsequent impact on highway safety. However, I would just repeat that the design has been worked through very, very carefully with both your conservation officer and your planning officer, and the highway safety concerns which were made before the scheme was amended. And since the amendments which have been reconsulted on, neither the parish nor residents have made further comment. To conclude, the proposal has no technical constraints to restrict it from coming forward. The proposal meets and exceeds every technical and design requirement that has been raised. The concerns regarding highway safety and visual amenity have all been met and exceeded in consultation with your officers who support the proposal. This proposal and how it sits within the site has been carefully designed, reflecting the best characteristics of the village, using the natural slate and stone, ensuring the property is reflective of the local vernacular. And furthermore, it has no impact whatsoever on the amenity of any of the neighbouring properties. The proposal can demonstrate that it would not cause harm, and I request councillors approve the application as set out within your officer's report and the update which Callum gave you at the end there. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll now go to members' questions to planning officers. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just sort of delve a little bit deeper? I actually had 3 questions before. They're sort of partly been answered by Mr Milburn and what Callum's already said, but the sort of concerns of the local residents. I think that there was a general concern around the sedum roof and the sort of character aspect. I mean, it is a conservation area, and in a conservation area we should be preserving or enhancing the character of the area. And I appreciate that there are different types of materials used below. You know, I think there's 3 different types of materials used on Well Bank. The couple of properties at the bottom, Well Bank itself, and then Tynedale Terrace at the top are all different materials. But this is, and it makes a point, the report, about the fact that it's sort of stone and slate. But the front elevation, the bit that people will see, there's not much stone there, if any. So does it really sort of fit within the character of the local area? The roof I've got less of an issue with, because it's already looking down. You're sort of looking down onto a grassed area anyway, so it's not going to look a lot different. But just that point about the front elevation. I've got 2 more questions. Shall I just fire those off as well? The other one was around the probably one for Michael, around the highway aspect. Is there a sort of a higher bar for visibility display on a very steep gradient? Because that particular bit, I've cycled up there and it's really hard. It is very steep at that, in front of that particular bit. It's quite a steep bank anyway, but that particular bit is particularly steep. So is that going to be, if somebody's coming down in a car or on a bicycle or whatever, and a car is edging out, will that visibility display really be adequate? And then the other bit was just really around a bit of advice about the building regs and the existing retaining wall, because I'm bound to get approached about it. So can residents sort of pick it up with building control early on so that everybody's really aware that that it is a local concern, and it gets sort of proper consideration, rather than dealing with it after the event if there's a problem. So they were the three things.
Do you want to do highways first? Yeah.
Good afternoon, councillors. You've got me for this one instead of Michael. It might seem strange the Highways Development Manager gave this one his dedicated time, but this access is an outcome of me working directly with Callum. To answer the question on visibility, within the way that visibility is calculated, it is possible to put the gradient into the equation. It really doesn't have that great an impact, and usually we'd be applying it in terms of trunk roads and motorways, not on a manual for street style street, which is a residential amenity. However, what we have done is sought to secure that the usual rules apply, which is 1.05 metres from the driver's eye line down to the curb edge for vehicle visibility, so 43 metres in both directions, which would be for a 30-mile-an-hour road. Wellbank obviously is a residential street with a speed limit, but to achieve 30 miles an hour on there would be some going, especially since it's only residents who and visitors to the end who go there. But certainly we've also done the pedestrian and cycling protection because of the footway amenity being the only footway on that side of Wellbank. So we've also secured the 2 metre by 2 metre usual visibility to make sure that pedestrians and motorists can see each other performing any movement.
That's great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry. Just as a follow-up to that, and then the other two questions on top. Officers have recommended the use of a condition which requires details of the access to be secured, agreed, implemented before the development is occupied. So I have been contacted by the neighbouring residents since the report was published, just to have a chat about the recommendation. So I had made it clear to them that they would need technical approval from my colleagues in Highways to actually get the access in. So basically what we've done is we've agreed the principle of putting an access in there, but they still need to do the technical matters at a later stage. So for the other two conditions, so regarding the design, yeah, I'll leave this slide up because it's probably quite useful. So it is a contemporary design approach, and the officer report.
Sorry, no.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So the officer report did highlight that it is a contemporary design approach, and there was a line in there saying that that approach may not have been suitable in every location. But of course, every application has to be considered on its own merits. So this particular plot is unusual, and the reason I've got this slide up is because it shows that you basically have to be right on top of the site to actually see the development. So going back to the site plan, it's actually pushed back quite far into the plot. So if you look on that slide there, the frontage of number 5 to the west and number 1 to the east, it's actually going to be set back quite far from the frontage. So you won't be able to see it from the view on the left. You'd have to be a lot closer to the plot itself. So it wouldn't have an adverse impact on the setting of the list of buildings to the east, such as St Andrew's Church. And it's quite a, I wouldn't say unique, but it's an unusual opportunity to get something in there which would be a slightly more contemporary design approach that wouldn't have an unacceptable impact on the street scene. So in terms of the materials which have been proposed, Building Conservation have looked at this in quite a bit of depth, both at the pre-application inquiry stage and under the formal application. And officers are of the view that in this location, that material palette is acceptable. So I agree, there's not loads of stone on that front elevation. And, you know, it's almost 50-50 really, where you have got a lot of hanging slate. There is a condition on the recommendation, I believe it's number 3, which does require further details to be submitted, including samples. So the applicant would be required to submit a physical sample of that hanging slate, just so that we check that the the colour and the hue is in keeping with the surroundings. Building conservation of the view that the material palette is acceptable. But the officer report does highlight, you know, it's not necessarily something that would be supported on other plots elsewhere in Corbridge. And then the last question regarding building regs. So I did have a chat with the 3 neighbouring residents over the phone, both yesterday and last week. And I did explain to them that it would be a separate matter outside of planning. It's something which has been flagged on a few of my cases in the past. But what the neighbours would need to do is they can flag it with colleagues in building control, so they can contact building control directly if they wish. And what building control would be doing is they'd be looking at the build, so in terms of its proximity to the retaining wall, in terms of their foundation design and other matters. I mean, I don't work in their team, so I don't know the full sort of exhaustive list of what they look at. But members of the public can raise it with building control, and I'm sure they would thoroughly look at this, given the public interest. So what I did say to the neighbours was that building regulations sign-off is a separate process, and I'm sure the applicant and their project team are mindful of that as well. There is a potential scenario where it could fail building regs. So even if plan permission was granted by members of this committee, they still need to go through the building regs approval process, and they're independent of each other. So I did make that clear to the neighbours as well, and I believe that did help alleviate some of their concerns. So yeah, hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it's really a comprehensive answer. Thank you.
Councillor Morfitt.
Thank you. I notice that it says the same thing in this report that it did in the last one about, due to the scale and nature of the development, a requirement to provide micro-renewable energy sources isn't considered necessary. So again, I'm not sure if that's consistent with our declaration of a climate emergency and with policy EN1 of the Tynedale core strategy. Does the fact that this is a new build give the council more power to insist on the provision of solar panels or other forms of renewable energy generation?
So, because it's a new build, yes, it does provide a bit more scope. So what officers have looked at, it's an interesting question because there aren't specific standards for what should be implemented for every sort of scale development. So, for example, it's not like highways, car parking bays where, depending on the scale of the building, you have to provide X amount of car parking bays. It's more of a matter of judgment. So policy EN1 of the core strategy, it is a material consideration, but it doesn't specifically state what measures have to be implemented each time. So what officers have looked at is that this is a contemporary design, and there are quite a lot of large openings on that southern elevation, which does seek to maximise solar gain. There's also roof lights, which again seek to maximise solar gain into the building. You've also got a cedar roof there as well. I don't know if you want to add anything, Kate, really, to that.
I think just as we discussed on the previous application, there is more scope for the applicant to incorporate those type of measures in their development, but we have limited powers to insist that that is done. In this case, obviously, Callum's outlined what he believes are the environmental benefits to the scheme, but we have limited powers to insist that they provide further measures to do that.
Any other questions? So we'll now need a proposal for this planning application. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I propose that move the officer's recommendation with the conditions as outlined in the report.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Horncastle.
Can I just say it's also with a Section 106 agreement as well as the conditions.
So we can open up for a debate. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I mean, the questions that have sort of been raised by local residents have been answered very thoroughly, and the nature of the design and the streetscape will sort of be often a matter of personal opinion, and there will no doubt be people that don't like it, but there'll also be a lot of people that do like it. And I think it's been done very sympathetically. So I think the only sort of niggling concern I've got is just sort of getting out there. Because the bank really is very steep, but we've had a very comprehensive answer from the highways officer explaining that should be safe, and I think the width of the footway certainly helps, because it's a long way before you get onto the road from the property. So I think all of those things considered, I'm broadly in favour of this development.
Thank you. So we'll go to a vote. Can we have a show of hands who was in favour?
Chair, just before you do, obviously the proposer has the right to sum up if they want to, if there's no more debate. Only if they want to.
Thank you for that. I'll decline that one. So everything's been said and needs to be said. Thank you. Usual for me.
So, Melanie, do you want to explain what we're voting for before we vote? Sorry.
I think this one's clear that it's a grant of planning permission subject to the conditions in the report and the completion of a Section 106 agreement.
So, can I have a show of hands who is in favour? So this application has been gone through. So agenda item 921/02542/CCD, provision of a single-storey modular classroom, Corbridge Middle School, Cow Lane, Corbridge, Northumberland, NE 655HY. Can I ask Marie to give us an update and present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to the provision of a single-storey modular building on a plot of land within an existing school site. Under the current scheme of delegation, this application has been brought forward to the committee because the land is in the ownership of Northumberland County Council. Full planning permission is sought for the installation of a single-storey modular building to provide classroom facilities for students. The building would be located within the existing school grounds on an existing grassed area to the east of the school site buildings and to the west of the residential properties located on the Riggs and the Chantry estate. The location plan is there. The proposed modular building would have an overall measurement of approximately 8 metres extending to 12.25 metres in depth and 10 metres to 16.3 metres in width, and would have a height from ground level of approximately 3.8 metres to the rear of the building. A number of statutory consultees were consulted and raised no objections, subject to the imposition of recommended planning conditions. No neighbour representations were received, and there's no updates to give members at this point, other than what's contained within the report. This is an aerial view of the site. As stated in the report, the application site is within an existing school and within Corbridge, and so therefore is in a sustainable location. The building is required to replace an existing modular building which is dilapidated and close to its end of life expectancy. The building is an existing building which is owned by NCC, and this would be reused to support the existing education provision in the school. So this is a view of where the modular building will sit, and as you can note, the pegs sort of show where the modular building will be. The modular building can't be sited in the same location as the existing building which it would replace, as the school needs to maintain the current level of capacity within the school. The old building will be removed once the new building is in situ, so there will be no disruption to education provision of students. Those are views of the site from the school buildings, and as you can see by the pegged area, that's the extent of the modular building on the site. I think it's important to note that planning permission was granted on the 17th of June 2021 under application reference number 21/00357/FUL for the siting of 3 garden teaching pods, and these would be located to the north. Sorry, bear with me. To the north of the existing the modular building, which will be on site. So those are the elevation and layout plans of the proposed modular building, and that is what the modular building will in effect look like on site. In terms of the principle of development, is considered acceptable. And owing to the distance and topography of the land, it's considered that the building wouldn't have an impact on the Corbridge Conservation Area, which is to the south of the site. The proposed building would be sited in an existing grassed area within the school grounds, but would not result in a loss of playing field. There would be no impact on the public right-of-way, number 8, which is adjacent to the east of the site, or to highway and pedestrian safety. It is therefore requested that members are mindful to approve the granting of planning permission subject to the conditions detailed within the officer report.
Thank you, Marie. So we don't have any public speakers today on this item, so we'll go to members' questions to planning officers. Councillor Murphy.
I'm going to ask about policy EN1 of the Tynedale core strategy again. Does it apply to prefabricated buildings? And if it does, could we encourage or condition the County Council to provide renewable energy measures such as solar panels or energy efficiency measures such as a heat pump in order to set a good example for others to follow?
The existing... Thank you. Oh, sorry, Marie, I have to go. The building that is going to replace the dilapidated building is an existing building, so the council are already using an existing building. This is not a new build or a new purchase to the council. So in that effect, it is a sustainable use of a new building. I believe that the Education Department are working with the planning team in terms of sustainability of buildings moving forward, but we are not at that point yet. And in this instance, as mentioned, it is an existing building that is being reused.
Any other questions? Councillor Riddle.
I've got a comment and a question. I mean, it is what it is. It's a modular building. It's not particularly pretty. Is this a permanent planning permission or a temporary permission? It's permanent. Is it on here as far as I can see?
It is a permanent planning permission, but obviously the building will have a lifespan, and it is replacing a building that's currently on site that has reached the end of that lifespan.
Okay.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Could I ask what the lifespan is?
You can, but I'm not guaranteed to be able to answer that, I'm afraid. I believe, that buildings like this have been in existence for sort of 20, 30 years.
Because I've got a village which was built to accommodate a mine, not an open cast mine, a mine, and it had a lifespan of 40 years. It's been there now for about 75. Just a comment.
Well, just to clarify, obviously it is a full plan permission or permanent plan permission they're seeking, so you would have to assume that the building will be there until it falls down.
Do we have a proposer for this application? Kath Homer? And a seconder. So can we open up for debate? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, I'm the local ward member. I mean, the school has capacity problems, and this will be a welcome addition, if granted, to help that. The building that it's replacing is obviously smaller, so it will give extra capacity. And although it's not the finest architectural sort of thing we've seen, it is better than what's there at the moment. So you know, I think and the school are very excited about having the extra capacity. It allows them to do things that they currently can't do. So you know, notwithstanding all of the other sort of planning considerations, I think it is a very positive potential development for a very good school. Thank you.
So do you want to say anything, Kath, on this?
I'm very happy with the application.
Yes, it's being installed during half term if it's permissioned.
So we'll go to a vote. It's quite clear what we're voting for. So can I have a show of hands of support? So that's, you know. We're just having a few minutes while the planning officers leave.
I'd like to have the appeal update report.
Are we?
We're just going to do that in a minute, Councillor Dale.
Sorry, what we waiting for, Kate? Why can't we do this? All right. Oh, well, they're very quiet, lot.
Thank you.
On a point of order, Chairman, and unless we've actually adjourned the meeting, we should be carrying on, you know.
Yeah.
We are carrying on, Councillor Sharp. Just the planning officers have asked for a couple of seconds to let some people leave. We will be having a comfort break after item number 11.
So we'll have to have 2 breaks then. Because you've got 2 or 3 councillors have disappeared.
Well, you know, that's not my fault. They walked out. I didn't mention the comfort break, did I?
Yeah. So agenda item 10, planning appeals update. And this is for information. Councillor Dale.
Yeah, can I just ask you, a while ago I asked about enforcement because there's, you know, we've got a lot of enforcement issues, and I asked if we could have a report, even if it's on performance. But how many are outstanding, how long they've been outstanding for, because I think it is well, we really need assurance that enforcement isn't becoming a larger issue, because I'm getting more and more complaints that are having to go to enforcement. So I just think that we actually need to understand, because I know the staff are under, you know, they've got an awful lot of workload. So we were promised this a long time ago, and we've never had a report. I think, John, did I ask you for one when you were in charge of planning?
You did email me, Councillor Dale, and you did have some response from Ron Murphy.
I asked you at full council, actually. Doesn't matter. But I think we do need to have a report so we know what's going on, please.
I think Councillor Dale, ordinarily matters regarding enforcement aren't obviously discussed at committee, and I think what's happened in other local area councils in respect of planning enforcement, that members can ask for updates to the planning officers directly.
So we can't have it as a committee discussion on...
No, it would be inappropriate to discuss enforcement. Because
I'm not talking about actually enforcement issues, I'm talking about enforcement numbers. We've got 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 or whatever. That's the type of thing I'm asking about.
We'll pass it on to the Director of Planning. I think you will probably do that out with the actual committee process and probably send you...
Just to do it properly. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 11, I'll pass over to Councillor Sesford for this one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott. Okay, item 11, which I've got an officer here to comment on. But basically, what it is, it's regarding the redevelopment of Queen Elizabeth High School, an update on the proposed highway works. This is an item to note. It is not an item that there's going to be proposals on or any decisions to be made. And we have Chris, oh, he's over there now, Chris Mead, who's going to make us discuss this. But what I would say beforehand, though, is this has just come out because there'd been, unfortunately, there'd been an error in the one that was previously sent out. So there was a new one issued. Now, before Chris starts, I should ask that, has everybody seen the new one and has everybody read it? Anybody need time to have a quick look, or are you all happy that we can just progress on this? In that case, I'll pass over to Chris then.
Thank you, Councillor Sesford. The report does provide a review and update on the highways issues raised by Councillor Kennedy, but also in response to local objection, groups of objectors, individual objectors, in relation to the discharge of the planning condition for the highways works. This report sets out the background, context and matters arising with respect to those highways works with the redevelopment at Queen Elizabeth High School, along with discussion and options on the highways works under review. Now, obviously, Councillor Sesford has just asked if everyone has read the report. I'm not going to read it again because why would we? But I just want to hit on the pertinent point, which is essentially the Highways Development Management team has reviewed the road safety audit stage 1 and stage 2, along with the submitted design when considering the discharge of condition for the highways works. The review for the purposes of discharging this condition has concluded that there are insufficient grounds for a greater extent of weighting restrictions on the basis of road safety, as there will not be a behavioural change, nor would the outcome of a collision change if it was to occur. HDM therefore recommend that revised drawings reducing the scope of weighting restrictions but retaining all other features are submitted. On the basis that revised plans are submitted, the HDM response to the discharge of conditions application will be to recommend to implement the highways works as follows, including weighting restrictions in accordance with the original Peter Brett Associates drawing, all other highways works in accordance with the final design following road safety audit stage 2 drawing to include tactile paving crossing points, improvements to controlled crossing points, footway widening, new vehicle and pedestrian access points to the school, resurfacing of Whetstone Bridge Road and a 20-mile-an-hour zone extension. Those works will be delivered in accordance with the agreed programme, which is contained within this report as Appendix B. So it's a somewhat complicated issue because it pertains around road safety, but essentially it's now up for discussion and Councillor Sesford can lead that and I can direct any questions as necessary.
Thank you very much, Chris. Obviously I've read that, and everybody else has said that they've read this report. It seems to set out relatively clearly what the procedures are in a sequential order, and shows how decisions are come to, and it shows that you know, the concerns of members, so like myself and Councillor Oliver and Councillor Homer on the steering group, and Councillor Kennedy over there, and members of the public have been listened to. So this is in the name of this one, is Councillor Kennedy. So would you like to start off, Councillor Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. That's really kind. First of all, I just want to raise just some. Oh yeah, of course. Very well. I do apologise. Thanks for that. Yeah, I just want to raise. First of all, I just want to raise the following. This has come from residents groups. Now, I've been working with the residents group since 2019 when the original application came in. I came to County Hall with the residents back then, supporting the application, you know, because we all want that school. We've all been banging on it for a long, long time, so the school, fantastic. But we were always concerned about the impact on local residents. It's a highly dense, populated area, lots of housing and cars parking around there as well. So I think what we're trying to look for is a balance here between obviously the needs of the school, and obviously it's going to be a bigger school, buses coming in, people dropping kids off, and students maybe even driving to school. So as a balance of safety for those walking and cycling and all those vehicle movements for the start and end of the school, but also a balance for those who live in and around the vicinity of that school. So some of the items they've raised with me, and I do wish to hold some time for myself to actually contribute to this debate as well. So they've highlighted that. They said, well, if some of the originally planned waiting restrictions, because there was an awful lot of double yellow lines on there, and that was one of the points I was trying to raise, was why are we putting double yellow lines, which are 24/7 restrictions, when we know the problems arise at the half an hour at the start of the school day and the half an hour at the end of the school day? And I think that was a real concern for me and for residents, was that it was just complete over control. So I welcome that that's been reduced in part, but I do have some concerns that is still some 24/7 double yellow lines around there. So the neighbourhood group, which is, you know, has about 100 and something members, and I've met with them many times, and recently, just a few weeks ago, we had a meeting about 50 of the residents together. So they're asking if Whetstone Bridge Road is now deemed safe by lifting some of those waiting restrictions, can the same not be said for the top of Tynedale Terrace, where double yellow lines will remain? They'll also ask, can early discussions be promoted to rerouting coaches onto Allendale Road well before the coach park is operational? We're aware that that coach park will not be operational till, is it April or summer 22, somewhere around that time? Can we also stress that the long-running concerns of residents are acknowledged in the report, as nearly the entire relationship about this has been about parents waiting in student parking? And I think this is a lot of the comments from the residents, is that they feel as though they haven't really been listened to as well, and you know that this should have been a give and take, and I don't think they felt as though they've been part of that really. They ask why proper consultation with disability groups has not been taking place, and they also they mention that that is there a need, and should we really stress that there needs to be a staffed crossing on Whetstone Bridge Road, because that's obviously the majority. Well, all the kids are going to go into the school from Whetstone Bridge Road. That is the only entrance in and out of the school. So should that be staffed, whether it be a lollipop lady or staffed in some way? And also they ask for that there should be some sort of working party, and that there should be representation on that, and that should be drawn from school users, parents, residents, councillors and officers to explore. So that's what those residents are asking, and I think they're all fairly reasonable. So can I leave that as a starting point? From my own point of view, you know, I have tried to get over and spoke with the residents over these last 3 years, and it's been very difficult because, well, the last 2 years has been difficult because of COVID, but we have communicated a lot. You know, just seeing yellow lines, right, let's go back. This school has been on that site for many decades. It is a larger school, so I have to reflect that, but it's been there for many, many decades. What problems have we had there? We did have an incident many years ago, over 10 years ago, and at that point, I, as the local councillor, implemented 20-mile-an-hour system around all the streets around that area, and introduced a part-time 20-mile-an-hour onto Allendale Road. Since then, the accident rate is very low, and we don't have accidents. It is busy, certainly at the start and the end of the school day. Of that, there is no doubt. So we do understand that. However, there is controls in place. There is currently singular timed yellow lines there. There is zigzags there. So all of those controls have actually operated fairly successfully. Because if they hadn't, we would have done something else. So, you know, it's just that's how it worked. And I think just from the residents' point of view, it's just that there's just been these additional controls put in, and it's going to have some impact on them for parking their cars. So there is a bit of self-interest in this, and I think what my concern is that by putting the car parking, the double yellow lines in these certain areas, people aren't going to stop having a car. You're just actually going to displace the car parking to elsewhere. Now, many of the councillors will know that this area, and it's very tight for buses coming in and buses coming out of that area, especially when they go down Helpool Lane and down and out. You know, it is extremely tight. There's double parking everywhere. Now, basically, I think there's every chance that some of this displacement of car parking actually just moves the problem further down the street and actually causes lots more pinch points. So I'm going to leave it at that. I recognise this is just to note the contents of the report, but I've represented the residents there and I've made my points clear as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Chris, do you want to reply?
I mean, I'm happy to address a specific point if you want me to. I mean, you covered a whole range of issues there, yeah. But is there any specific point just to make sure that you've got the clarification you want for this discussion purpose?
Well, I think what I would be really interested in is what happens next. Really, I think you know the residents want to know what happens next. Can they feel as though they're being listened to and actually feed into some sort of working group? You know, we're conscious that we've got a period of time now between the bus bays being built. So we've got an issue that needs to be managed between there and then you've got the full proper operational school after that. So you've got two issues. I think you've got that one and then the one after. But I think the residents that would like to feel as though they're part of that conversation.
Okay. In planning terms, what happens next is that my recommendation will go to the planning case officer. They will need to talk to the applicant and say you need to amend your plans so that HDM is satisfied to not object to these proposals. If they do that, then we'll remove our objection. That will be a no objection to the planning drawings. The applicant will then need to talk to technical services. They will have to reconsult on the traffic regulation order, which has been done with the amendments in place, so it exactly reflects the planning drawing. And then if that's successful, they can make that order and that scheme can be implemented. In terms of moving forward and in terms of the school, The school does have a school travel plan associated with it, and it's going to have to use it, and it's going to have to talk to its residents nearby. It's going to have to talk to its pupils. It's going to have to talk to other users of that road during those times of day where it's most busy, because they are looking for a lot of bus movement to come in and out of that. We have assessed it in planning terms. It's not an unacceptable impact in capacity terms. It's not an unacceptable impact in safety terms. But making it work well is a function which the school's going to have to do. They're going to have to use that space on the first day and go, oh, hold on a minute. We maybe need to stagger some of these arrivals. Maybe we need to hold some of these bus drivers here and tell them not to exit. Now, they've had some of those preliminary discussions, but the reality is that the best way to find out how these things work is to get them going, see how they operate, and then make functional changes to see the best ways of doing it, which is always the case, which is you can always write the best plan in the world, but the fact is that once you open it, that's when you find out how it really works. So I think the school's going to do that because they're going to want to be proactive. They're not want to get bad publicity off the back of opening it, and we'll have the school travel plan and be able to use that as a planning mechanism if necessary to make sure that they are taking up any measures that they need to make that area work as well as possible. It will be safe, it will be in capacity, but to work as well as possible.
So timing?
The school will in fact open somewhat imminently. So the matter now is we have a programme for the highways works and for the waiting restrictions. The final resurfacing will happen next summer. That's when we would consider all of those elements be closed down. They obviously have some ability during that period to refine anything that they've already got agreements for, but a school travel plan will have to operate for the lifetime of the development. You know, each year you have a new raft of first-time users of that facility. Each year you need to educate and ensure that they are as safe as possible. If it transpired, for example, that it was becoming evident that they would benefit from a school crossing patrol, then those could come forward. But certainly at the moment it's a case of let's not overdo something that might not be necessary. Once you've committed to it, very difficult to take something away, but certainly at the moment we're still satisfied that as a highway that sits there, it's going to be safe for those users.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it'll be Councillor Homer and then Councillor Dale.
I said I'm glad Councillor Kennedy's in support of the school because it's a bit late if you're not, because we were up there, Councillor Sessford, Councillor Oliver and I on Friday, and it's probably the best thing that's happened to Hexham in an awful long time, and it's fabulous to see. Just a couple of observations though. There are some very real issues here. I mean, we've built 2 schools onto one site, and so we have a whole raft of younger children than obviously has happened in past years that are going to be attending this school. And having got 2 children of my own at the school, I can tell you now that you know, young people will find their own way to get to that school, and it'll always be the simplest, the quickest, and not, you know, not necessarily the safest. So we need to get an absolute optimum point with this, in the best interests of the school, in the best interests of the pupils, but we also need to take into account and make sure this is in the best interests of the people who live around the school. And Councillor Kennedy is right in saying it is a densely populated area, and there have been a number of issues raised you know, over the last 2 years while this building has been in the making. It's an interesting observation that we're now talking about the school carrying out a lot of this, because right from the word go, you know, we've had an education department. I'm a little bit disappointed actually that there is nobody here from education this evening, but it has been a managed project, and we've gone to great lengths to consult about this. We've stood in Hexham Abbey and done an open consultation with local residents. We did one in the actual building itself in the school. So why wouldn't we be doing that now, you know, with the people who live alongside this and giving them the chance to actually have their say? Because actually I don't think they're being unreasonable here. And, you know, I'm glad to see that there have been some alterations to the original plans, but they've still got some real issues, and they've obviously got a question mark over the the timings of the road safety audits 1 and 2 when they were carried out, and I sympathise with that, because looking at it on paper, it doesn't seem that those have been carried out at the busiest times. You know, when you would probably see how busy it gets around that area. But, you know, they're talking about the fact that they've got to live with these restrictions. And, you know, you are talking about half an hour to 40 minutes in the morning, half an hour to 40 minutes on an evening, Monday to Friday, and term time. And, you know, the one thing that we've all experienced in Hexham, you put a traffic regulation order in and you just displace the issues, you know, further around. And it's so densely populated, it's so difficult. You know, you know, I fear that we're going to cause a greater problem with all of this, and I just don't think on the plans that we've got here at the moment we've got that optimum point right. There's also issues about signage. You know, we've just built this beautiful, fantastic school. It's in a conservation area. I don't want the area, you know, we did an audit, didn't we, some years ago, trying to get rid of the signage with the highways department, not put more in. But there are other issues as well, you know, for instance, the disability issue. And I think if the RNIB are raising concerns about this, that's a concern for me. So, you know, we have got some time to look here. You know, that front of the old school, if you like, has got to be demolished. So we know that nothing's going to happen really until midpoint 2022. So can we not just take this opportunity to look at some of the more salient points here and do something about it before we get, you know, you rightly said, you know, why do something and then find you wanting to take it back out again? And I think that's absolutely right, because at the moment it feels like a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Homer. Chris?
I think we've got some of my correct colleagues in the room to hear this, but the truth of the matter is that technical services are a competent highway authority that know how to design a highway that our users should have within this county. And what they've done with this scheme is sought to promote the most inclusive design. They've looked at every drop crossing and said every drop crossing that we're going to touch, we're going to turn into a flush drop crossing with the correct tactile paving that correctly informed visually impaired users how to use our highway in this location. Now, it's problematic because we have engineers, we have road safety auditors, whether they're independently in-house or independently external, who review designs, who haven't touched it, they haven't been a part of that design process. It's their job just to look at it and go, could this be safer than what an engineer's promoted? And they supported the provision of those features. I'm personally reluctant to request to them. I don't have a good planning reason to make them not do that. I think inclusivity is top of the list in the MPPF. I think it is supported throughout planning, and I think that any scheme should do that. However, I can ask them to review their layout and see if they think they've got those walking routes absolutely correct. But I wouldn't want to start critiquing every single time that we take up a drop crossing and make it inclusive, because I think we have a responsibility to do that. In terms of the weighting restrictions, I think the most notable thing here is the flip-flopping on the side of the road, and I think that's where the lesser amount of single yellow is coming from. However, because of the increase in bus movements and the additional accesses which are going to serve the school, it was necessary to do that and protect the opposite side with double yellow line, and to put the single yellow line in the location where the visibility displays were needed at school time, but at every other time of day when the school's not operational and is not producing movements, then the parking can occur there, because if that access is not in use, then you don't need to protect the visibility for it. I think they've taken a very usual approach in engineering terms to developing the design, and it is unfortunate that in some instances that a design solution has a repercussion, which is to displace some existing parking or otherwise. All I would say is, when we look back at the original planning application, when we look back at the original work that was submitted, this is the same plan in terms of the extent of the weighting restriction which is now being proposed. So at the planning stage, the entire public had the opportunity to comment on that plan. Councillors had the ability to look at that plan before they made their decision at this committee. Whether or not it was the same councillors today, I don't know. But certainly it has been under a full round of scrutiny of public consultation as presented and as proposed today. So in my view, I would always support schemes which have never been seen to go through a full round of public consultation, because they should, because we need to understand public views. But I think those public views were presented and were discussed adequately at the planning stage, which is why I've supported this scheme, because it is the original planning proposals.
Thank you. Do you want to turn your mic off? Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. First of all, I don't think I'm going to make any remarks on the actual WO lines in that area, because this is Councillor Kennedy's ward. He knows how the people operate, etc., and he knows actually what they're unhappy with. What I'm looking at is actually Hexham High School is actually, it's got a massive catchment area. We've got a catchment area. I have children who go to from Riding Mill, who go to the high school. They go from Corbridge. They go from everywhere. And one of the big things is that, for instance, a lot of our kids are taken by bus. Some aren't. We have another bus that goes here, there, everywhere, and the buses aren't always full. So there's a good piece of work to be done with the travel plan to actually try and get more children on the bus rather than going by car. And there's no reason why you can't ask all the areas actually to make sure that all the buses are full. I've got an empty bus sometimes, half empty, and instead of going and getting another bus, they'll pick some kids up. Do it, you'll have to, it's got to be, as you said, the school's got to be very strict about implementing it. And of course, the other thing is, I mean, you know, it'd be lovely if all the kids could cycle to school. There's all kinds of things to look into the future, rather than just banging double yellow lines down, because they actually just displace cars all the time. But I think the travel plan, the school travel plan, it would be good if they could share it with all the councillors who actually feed into that school, the catchment area. Certainly, I mean, to be quite honest, Councillor Kennedy's been going on about a new school for, I can't remember, 15, 16, 18, he's never stopped, and good for him. And a lot of other people have. But I think the big thing is we've now got a new build. It's great. But what we need to do, ensure that all the environment, the people, the villages around, etc., and how they manage their children going to school, and that means getting the parents to work together, maybe more often, but to keep less cars on the road actually going into that school area. I know you can look at it and say, oh, it's easy to do, it's just difficult, you can't do that. But actually, it's a way forward. We have to be thinking that way. That's what the government's telling us all the time. So, you know, they can walk, but that's not up to me, because, you know, as I said, it's Councillor Kennedy to decide, it's his ward, how he wants people to work. But if you could just share the travel plan with us, all the councillors whose actually children go into that school, that would be helpful. But, you know, it's always going to be a problem. It'll never go away. But I'm sure we can actually make differences. But you have to look a lot forward ahead. You know, I don't know if they've got cycle holes and things like that. So cyclists can work. I mean, children can cycle. Older children can cycle. Some are even driving to school now. So, you know, you're going to have that too. You know, if they want, all the sixth form could all get into school and drive. You know, park their cars up, whatever. So that's something the school might have to think about as well. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'm glad to see this report, because it's good to hear that we can have some input into what's actually going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, there is a school travel plan, which was one of the secured documents at the planning stage. There's also a requirement for them 6 months after occupation, so basically 6 months after the first term opening, details of a full school travel plan in line with the approved school travel plan, so it has to piggyback in planning terms for both schools, including an action plan, and it has to consider initial travel to school survey, so they find out the existing behaviour, and then clearly specify targets on how to change that modal share, and then monitoring, review and effectiveness of that travel plan, and then a scheme provided for a biennial monitoring report to be submitted to the local planning authority. So if the local planning authority received that information and was clearly disappointed with the modal shift that the school was achieving, we would engage with them to make sure that they were supporting sustainable modes. We just don't want to be in a car reliant world anymore. EV vehicles doesn't mean better in many ways, shapes and forms. They're still energy dependent, and energy has a cost no matter how you look at it. Walking, cycling and public transport with large capacity are definitely modes of transport that we want to support, and we'll always push for those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want any questions or discussion? Councillor Morford.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I do think this proposal still relies heavily on signs and lines and misses a number of opportunities to encourage staff and pupils to walk or cycle to school. And in particular, I think it's a shame that school streets and park and stride initiatives have been discounted. But I wanted to ask a few specific questions about double yellow lines, if you don't mind. Given that it's moving rather than parked cars that constitute a danger, what is the actual purpose of the double yellow lines? Are they going to make Whetstone Bridge Road a safer place for school children? Also, will they be enforced, and can parents be fined for dropping their kids off?
Thank you.
The traditional response with highways powers has been to protect school frontages, because that's where the children are busiest in their area of activity. They're just coming out of the school gates or coming into it. Their arrival pattern is very short period of the day. And so to interact them with motor vehicles is a poor decision, to take a vulnerable road user and put them with the possibility of conflict with a motorised vehicle, simply because child's going to come off worse, aren't they? There's no question about that. So historically, what's happened outside schools, and Councillor Kennedy knows this because he spoke about the accident which occurred 10 years ago, which is the exact reason why there's a 20-mile-an-hour zone and the waiting restrictions outside the school, because someone turned on that road and hit a child because it was parked up on both sides, because people were trying to just, unfortunately, people condense themselves to the quickest, shortest distance to get to their child. That's not wrong in many circumstances, but if you're going to do that in an intense phase, there's a risk of harm. That's exactly what happened, and once in 10 years is once too many. So we acted at that time, we intervened, and we put in the measures. So weighting restrictions are what we have highways powers to work with. School keep clear markings, single yellow lines. We recognise that double yellow lines are the most intrusive, are the ones that guarantee displacement. But what I would say is that that scheme's been in for 10 years, and up until now hasn't caused much resonance. It was only when it was proposed to become bigger than it already was is when that resonance came through. So for us, yes, weighting restrictions, which are enforceable, can be ticketed, will be supported by a traffic regulation order, which means therefore we can have parking attendants out there issuing tickets, and the school could actually request that if that was one of the school travel plan initiatives, to make sure parents or people arriving at the school were doing it appropriately.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Well, thanks very much for Chris for coming along and writing that report in the first place for members. Thank you very much. We're now going to take a short comfort break. According to me, it's 18:22, so if we gather back here about 18:30. Thank you. Try that one again, live stream. Thank you. Knew I shouldn't have had that water. Okay, welcome back, folks. We're going to have a little change of order, especially if I can find my glasses. And we're going to bring in Inspector Gary Neal. So Inspector Gary Neal, thank you.
Just evening, everybody. I think I recognise most of your faces. It's nice to meet in person. It's been a while, hasn't it? But for those of you who don't know, Gary Neal, I'm the inspector on the Tynedale neighbourhood policing team. I also have the rural crime team, who are a separate team and do what it says on the tin. We deal with rural crime. So, Chair, my intention was just to give a general update around some issues and then some facts and figures, and then open it up for anybody who wants to raise anything with us. By all means, do so. So, those of you who remember the last update I gave, which I think was around about March, we were still in the midst of the pandemic. We're still in the lockdown. Since things have opened up, our life has become a bit less hectic, as you can imagine. However, things are getting back to normal. So in terms of the normal demand that we would expect, we are beginning to see that. The one thing I will say is crime within Tynedale is low. It's been low for a long time and it remains low. It's a really safe place to live. It's the safest place to live, certainly in my force area, and probably as I guess within the country as well. So yeah, that's good. Bit of a general focus on what we're looking at, what things that we concentrate on. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but domestic abuse, particularly the safeguarding of domestic abuse victims, high risk victims, and by high risk I mean high risk of being seriously injured or murdered, medium risk victims, so slightly less than standard risk victims. We deal with the safeguarding of most of those. Obviously, it takes up a huge amount of our time, and rightly so, I think. The team spend a lot of time trying to safeguard and deal with offenders for domestic abuse. We also monitor registered sex offenders, so we do have quite a number within the Tynedale area. We spend a lot of time monitoring their compliance with their orders. So, for example, that might be they might have an order that they're not allowed to have a mobile device. They've got to allow us into the house. They've got to allow us to search for that device. Or if they have a device, they might not be allowed to have certain bits of software on that. So that's something else we do. And then repeat victims of crime. So people who were a victim of 2 crimes in 3 months, we then have a look at that and see why. See if there's a reason why. See what we can do to safeguard them. Is there some problem solving we can do? So primarily those three, in terms of what day-to-day business, those are the 3 things that my team. Now, my team aren't response. We don't respond. We do respond in incidents occasionally, but not as often as the response team will. That's their job. But we spend a lot of time dealing with safeguarding of those victims and monitoring those offenders. The one thing I was going to mention, the one thing that is raised all the time is road safety. We spend a lot of time, and rightly so, dealing with road safety because I would suspect if I was to open the floor, when we do open the floor, the majority will mention some issues around speeding, some concerns around parking, whatever those may be. I have concerns with speeding everywhere within the Tynedale area, as you can imagine. We'll do a bit of a stage process with that, and again, we'll spend a huge amount of time dealing with it. We'll have our community speed watch volunteers, and they are vetted and recruited through our website. And I would urge, if you have anybody interested in becoming a community speed watch volunteer, or if you have any concerns over speeding, that you point them towards our citizen and policing section on our website. They are very, very effective. Basically, they'll put a high-vis jacket on, they'll get a bit of training, they'll note down the speed of vehicles going, and then they'll send it through to us, and then we take up some action, whatever actions needed from that. We also do obviously quite a bit of enforcement myself with speeding. With CSOs go out and they do a similar sort of process where they will monitor the speed. We'll send letters out. Those 2 actions are primarily to try and educate people. It's not to try and enforce the speeding. They don't have the powers to do that. However, the constables and the sergeants on my team do, and we do some enforcement, primarily. Recently anyway, in and around Ponteland, we've done quite a bit in and around there. So we do that. We do have that available to us if we need to. And then obviously there's the van as well. The van will deploy where we're getting complaints, where we're getting accidents, where we're getting data through that would suggest there is a speeding problem. So again, you need to be telling us if you've got a particular issue, and now can I get the van to go down there. And again, that's primarily, we would look at an education aspect with that. We do advertise the fact that the van will be going down because we want people not to speed. We don't necessarily want to catch them, but so yeah, there is that. I'll just touch upon a few local issues, and I have mentioned already, we are aware, clearly like anywhere else, that there's issues with drugs in and around Tynedale. The main focus of what we're looking at the minute would be Holtwhistle, Hexham and Prudhoe. We know there's a link between all three of those towns, and we have spent some time executing warrants. We have been successful recently in getting some decent recoveries for Class A drugs, heroin, so we know that it is out there, and I'm sure that will come as no surprise to anybody sat within the room. We do spend a bit of time trying to catch drug dealers, and again, we need information, we need that intelligence coming through. Antisocial behaviour, we had some huge spikes in antisocial behaviour this time last year with the lockdown. The way the force and the way the government categorised antisocial behaviour at the time, any report of a COVID breach was antisocial behaviour. So as you can imagine, we no longer have any COVID legislation. We're not getting those reports through. Where antisocial behaviour levels have dropped off significantly. But again, I do appreciate it is still out there. The primary focus really for us has been Ponteland and around Ponteland and around the high school, where we have had some issues with kids coming from out the area, coming from Newcastle, and causing some concerns for some residents who live within there. So the only other thing really for me to mention before I just touch upon some crime figures would be motorbikes. We're getting lots of complaints about motorbikes, particularly off-road bikes in the forests, Slaley, Walk, Kielder, massive area. It's quite problematical for us to do anything about that. I'm not going to lie, because often by the time we get the report and we get there, they could be 20, 30 miles away. But we do a lot of work, and I would anticipate we'll do a lot of work come the winter when this problem seems to manifest itself a bit more. So again, we are aware, particularly there are some huge concerns about off-road motorbikes and not the traditional, certainly for me, having spent a lot of time working down the sort of urban conurbations of like people riding up and down back lanes, but more people coming into the area on holiday, for example, to use their bikes in the forest. So yeah, that's another issue that we are aware of and something that we are trying to address. So I don't really want to bombard you with statistics. I'll just touch upon some of the key crime categories that we are looking at. Unfortunately, what I will have to do is break it down into East and West Tynedale. So I'll start with East Tynedale, which is Prudhoe, Ponteland, Corbridge, up to sort of Kirkhall, and then up to the border with Durham. By far and away, the biggest issue that we've had and the most prevalent crime is violence against a person, and the less serious, if that's the right term, but without injury. So things like, somebody pushes somebody or might bump into somebody deliberately or might trip them over and there's no injury. But included with that as well are things like harassment and stalking, and we have seen a bit more prevalence of those over the last, well, certainly since the lockdown, because people seem to be spending more time on their digital devices, more time on the laptops, more time on the iPads, and they're able to do that. And the majority of not all, but the majority of the stalking and the harassments that we're getting are through text messages and people accessing people's emails accounts and trying to sort of figure out what they're doing from that. So in the last, certainly East Tynedale, I've had 522 incidents of violence without injury. What I will say is the majority of those, it seems a lot, and it is a lot, but the majority of those are linked to institutions. So some care homes. There's a couple of care homes in particular where staff are getting assaulted by residents, where residents are assaulting each other. And a lot of them don't have any capacity, they suffer from dementia, but those are crimes and they do get recorded as such. And similarly with Ferndine, the hospital in Prudhoe, we spend a lot of time dealing with assaults on staff in Ferndine. I've got 2 officers on my team at Prudhoe not dedicated solely to Ferndine, but they do spend a lot of time going in and interviewing people and taking statements off staff. So encouragingly, our burglary levels are relatively low in East Tynedale. 87 in the last 12 months. It seems like a lot, but a lot of those would be to shops. A lot of those would be to vacant properties, to the building sites that seem to be everywhere at the minute. Like empty houses being broken into. We do appreciate that there have been some burglaries to houses, and I have had a few recently within the Wylam area, where we know who's doing it. We are looking for that particular offender at the minute, but he is travelling in from out the area, from the West End of Newcastle. He's travelling in and he's committed 2 of those offences during the day and I think 1 during the night. So and burglary it's a horrendous crime. It's something that really does cause some concerns. But what I will say is ratio of people it is low, and would generally tend to know who's doing them and catch them. The only other thing really, vehicle crime within, certainly again, this is East Tynedale, is low. We've had 55 offences, and that encompasses all sort of vehicle crime. So not just your theft of vehicles, but might be a theft of a quad from a farm, a damage to a vehicle, somebody who might take a vehicle without consent, that type of thing. So as I said at the beginning, crime is low, both east and west, and that, you know, it is a safe place to live. But like everywhere, we do have some issues. So I'll move across to west. So obviously everything else within the Tynedale area: Hexham, Haltwhistle, Hayden Bridge, up to Bellingham, Kielder. Again, the headline figure would be violence without injuries for the same reason that I've already touched upon around stalking, around harassments, but also institutionally based as well. We do have some a hospital within Hexham and some other care homes and young people's homes, that type of thing, where we do see things reported. Burglary is slightly less in Hexham. We've had 55 offences within Hexham. Not the majority of those, but a lot of those are related to the industrial estate. We do see some of the depots, the council depots getting broken into, some of the builders, merchants, that type of thing. Again, dwelling house burglary levels are low, encouragingly so within the both areas, but particularly across in Hexham. And then vehicle crime is around about the same as it would be across in East Tynedale with 53 offences. Again, all sorts of different types of vehicle crime, damages, theft of, TWOCs, taking without owner's consent, that type of thing. So, as I say, I don't really want to sit here and just go through every particular crime type, because it's not something I guess you want to listen to. But the violence against the person without injury are the main ones that I'm seeing across both sides. And obviously we're spending a lot of time dealing with the safeguarding side of things, dealing with speeding. And I think we'll continue to do that, because it's right that we do that. So really, that's a brief whistle-stop tour from each chair. I presume you want to open it up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll open it up in just a second. But I'm going to have a quick question first, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Graffiti. I'm assuming that comes under the antisocial behaviour.
Well, that would be a crime. It would be a
right.
criminal damage.
Okay, because we're having a little bit of a build-up of graffiti, mainly around the same area, which is the play park and the seal in Hexham. Yeah. We've had just some a couple of days ago, and the council, as Councillor Kennedy is full aware, over the years we've put in an awful lot of money into that place, and so I mean, painting on it, graffiti, but also damage to the wet post surfaces, which are quite a lot. Now we have got CCTV in there, and I think that's been looked at, but. What's your approach to that?
So, I mean, what
on the CCTV or
what are we talking about? That's getting graffiti.
Well,
is it
at the moment? They painted, spray painted all over the wet paw under the slides and
right. So within the play park.
Yes, within it. Yes. So I do believe that the officers, the council officers are looking at the CCTV to try to find some information. But this is not a standalone event. This has been 2 or 3 occasions. So. As you said before, you tend to know a lot of the people who do it, and I don't know. Do you work with the council to help with the CCTV, and then obviously you know the people on the ground who've been committing these things?
The park, that park, we do see it doesn't get reported all the time, but we do have spikes within the park. I think the last one I remember was when the kids broke up from school, and we had large numbers of them going within the park to drink, and and celebrate the fact that they were finished school. To be fair to them, they did take black bin bags and tidy the mess up after them as well. So yeah, it's something I wasn't particularly used to. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, we would work with whoever. Somebody from my team would link in with the council and see whether we'd access that CCTV. What we would be keen to know is there a particular type of tag that's being used, because they generally use the same tag all over. So yeah, but if you can give us some details later, then. Although if it's been reported, I'll have those already.
I'll check with public protection who are dealing with some of this and trawling through the video evidence and get that to you. There's one other one, and I'm sure there's some hands coming up, which I can just ask, please. You mentioned earlier on about sex offenders and that, and now I've had issues on this before.
Yep.
I've had meetings with officers at the police station, and everybody who reports things like that to me will say, well, you're not all about it. You know this and you know that. You know, well, we know nothing. And I know, I've been told it's on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. And one part of us is quite thankful for that, actually. But, I mean, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, do we not need to know because we're the ones who get the reports? When people are being placed in places.
Clearly, it's a real contentious issue. Nobody really wants to have a sex offender living within the community. Unfortunately, they've got to live somewhere, and you know they do, and we do monitor them for those very reasons to make sure that they're not offending. But I think it would be wrong for us to start
spreading the net.
Yeah, because you know I'm sure nobody within this room, but sometimes these things do leak out, and then you find yourselves in a position where the house is set on fire and they're murdered or seriously injured, or somebody living next door. You know, there's a bit some ancillary damage caused there or injuries. So it wouldn't be a situation I would really want to go down.
No. I mean, I can understand the answer because leaks have got to come from somewhere, and it's the least people you tell. But it can be quite hard when
absolutely, I agree
of it as well. Like, but that's all from me, right? Councillor Kennedy.
Just one. I think the last time we spoke, we mentioned about the Allendale Road going into Hexham. Obviously, we have 3 schools in that vicinity now.
Yeah.
And I know we asked about getting, doing some speed gun activity there. I was just wondering, had that happened?
Yes.
And what was the outcome?
Yes, it has happened. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to tell you at the minute what the outcome was, but I know PC Barry Emery's been out with a gun on Allendale Road and he's been monitoring the traffic. I can find out for you and let you know, but it is K2's a Sergeant Benson. She has a list of areas within the, particularly within Hexham, and that is on near the top of her list. I know that because I've seen it, and because of the risk associated with the schools as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, sorry, Councillor Homer.
Thank you, yes. We've talked about speed in Hexham East before, Corbridge Road, Fellside, Gallows Bank, and I have included them on my top 3 LTP priorities as well. I just am detecting, dare I say, that there seems to be a higher incidence of young people, young drivers, and I just thought a couple of years ago there was a really good joint event that I think the police did with our community safety team, fire and rescue. I think it was down at the Mart. It was aimed at young drivers, and we were out in Animating Hexham the other night, and there'd been an accident at Whitecross with a young person that had just happened. There was a near miss on Fellside last night that got reported to me today, which I passed on to you, and there's been another one on Corbridge Road. So can I ask, what's the possibility of being able to hold one of those events again?
Yeah, I mean, I remember them. We used to do them at other places I've worked. They were really impactful, quite distressing at times, and they used to show videos and demonstrate people being cut out of cars. So I think 100% I would support that, and I'll get the team to link in with the fire service, who I think led on it, if I remember rightly, to see whether we can do something similar now. What we should be allowed to with things opening up. So yeah, good idea.
Sorry, you got me on that there. A couple of things actually. One is to do with speeding again. There's been a lot of problems with bikes, as there is normally every summer, and you'll be well aware of what there's been in the West. What exactly can you do to deter them? Because a camera van will be no good because the number plates are on the back, and by the time they've overtaken the camera van, they'll have slowed down anyway, so you're not getting a true speed. So what can you actually do to try and alleviate the problem? Because it's the main road to Hartside for one thing. They're starting to use Allendale as well, going through up towards Cows Hill. Also from Brampton towards Hartside is a bad road. So just wondering what you can possibly do.
I think you're right, raise it, because we've seen it. We have seen, and I mentioned it earlier. There are people holiday in the county, primarily just to use the bikes and to ride around. And unfortunately, we did have a fatal accident with exactly that type. Somebody who came in on holiday and unfortunately lost their lives. So we are aware of it, and we have seen an increase in it. A lot of the complaints I get are about the noise of bikes. Now, unfortunately, it's not an offence to have a noisy bike, and I would struggle. We have spoke with the other agencies to see whether it's something that they can monitor and they can't, and we can't either. So, you know, and it probably would be wrong of us to sit here and say that we will, but it's not an offence. Yeah. But, you know, you're absolutely right. It does get raised, and there will, you know, we know that the speed. For me, it's more of a partnership issue, something that we would need to raise, and we do have a monthly partnership meetings with well, a number of different partners from county, from the fire service, etc., etc., etc. So I think that would be a starter for 10 if you could give us, well, you've given us some areas, and I can also get, you know, give a commitment that we will get some, I'll try and get some staff out to see if we can monitor it. And the best thing, the most, when I talked about the bikes up in Slaley in the forests, they generally tend to muster. So for that, it's just the garage in Stocksfield. They'll go to the garage in Stocksfield and get a sandwich of coffee, fill their bikes up, or wash it afterwards. You know, so it's that engagement afterwards around. So that's something we'd look at. I know Belgium's a popular spot for them before they go off into Kielder, and we've done that in the past as well. So I think the answer to your question would be a partnership approach. You know, whether through signs, you know, and a bit of engagement with themselves, just to say, look, you know, just drop it down a gear and try not to be so noisy if you don't mind.
I like that, knock it down again.
Yeah.
It's not off-road with me personally.
No, I know.
It's main road. They used to congregate at Hartside, and then that burned down. I still don't know if they do congregate there still. I think they have been congregating at Alston, in the car park down beside the garage. So I presume your officers will go out and have words with them. And
yeah, just a bit of engagement with them, and just to ask them to try, you know, to be a bit more reasonable, if that's the right term, when they're out riding. But I mean, it's not insurmountable the fact that they've got small number of places to try and get them stopped. You know, and I've already talked about that. And we do that. We do go out and try and catch people.
Great. One other thing, and I don't know if you can answer this anyway. I don't want to jeopardise any inquiries, but drugs in the West. Is there anything you can tell me about that? I know they're there, but
yeah, well, they are. You know, let's be realistic. They're everywhere. We're not going to keep them out. We have recently charged somebody. Are you talking about Haltwhistle? Yeah, we've recently charged somebody. Yeah, we've recently charged somebody from Haltwhistle with possession with intent to supply. Good recovery. I worked in Blythe for a long time, and I think we recovered more from him than I did vast majority of times in Blythe, which was good. And there are. You're right. I'm not going to jeopardise anything else, but what we spend a lot of time on it. So yeah, but I need to have that information.
I'm trying to get information,
Yeah.
but it's getting people to actually speak up personally. You know,
Well,
they're fighting
look,
them.
I would be happy to speak if you've got somebody to speak to them myself and try and reassure them on that front.
I'll keep trying.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Morfitt?
Was it you or me?
Thank you. A few residents in my ward would like to do community speed watch. One of the parish councillors told me that it's on hold at the minute. But what you said sounded like it's not.
It has been. I take it this is up at Reedsdale.
Oh, it's Humsoft ward.
Right. Oh, right. Okay. Well, I recently met with my superintendent with some parish councillors in Reedsdale, discussing exactly that problem. And it was 2 weeks ago, but it's now been opened up again. So we are hoping to start that recruitment process again. Obviously, it's been difficult over the last 18 months or so, whatever, to try and do that. But yeah, citizens and police can go on the website, you click on that, and there should be a tab there for Community Speed Watch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dale?
Yes, thank you. Gary, thank you very much. Just to ask very quickly, mentioning drugs, I do know, because during the summer holidays we had concerns with some children, and I have to say the police were absolutely brilliant, and they managed them totally, and also their parents all had a knock on the door as well, which they didn't appreciate, I can tell you. They all actually didn't come from my ward, but the events actually happened in my ward. Right. Are you working with the schools still, on high schools, on drug prevention? Because that's obviously where they are. You know, we know that. I just wondered if you were working with the high school, but also the middle schools too?
We work with all the schools, some more than others. But yes. As a straightforward answer to the question, yes, we do. We work with all the schools to try and get those messages out. And obviously, the message we get out in the middle school will probably be different to one we will get out in the high school.
Yeah.
And again, we do get information through around. It's normally people who might have just left, or might still be people who were taking the drugs into the school. And we've done a lot of work with schools around drugs, particularly, as I say, with the older kids. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Sorry to go back onto drugs again, but I didn't think of the question before. When you said someone had been arrested at Holtwhistle for supplying, etc., has this been publicised at all?
Yeah, he's been charged.
And charged?
So, yeah, he's been charged. Well, I would suspect not. If you're not aware, obviously there's a process that we'll have to follow. So it would only be once it gets to court that we'll be in a position to say that whatever his name is being charged with. So that will. And look, I'd be more than happy to get that message out.
If you could, please, it
absolutely,
would give the locals more faith in what is happening.
No, yeah, I agree.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any more? No. Well, thanks very much for coming along today, Gary.
Good to meet you all.
It's been helpful to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
And, we'll see you at the next time. Thank you.
Chair, no, we have no public questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we move on to item 13. Petitions. Have we any petitions to receive? Or?
Chair, no new petitions that I'm aware of for our area. We are expecting a report which will hopefully come to the next area committee meeting.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 15, we have our goodly men from the highways and the local services. So I think we'll go with Mr. Fisher first. He wants to give us some information. We keep David waiting.
Right, we're currently on the reactive maintenance side. All inspections are being carried out and are up to date, and it looks like defects have decreased in the last couple of months, we're pleased to say. We've still got the extra resources in Tynedale area to cover the extra work that we've got. And we've just had a new hot box delivered, which has replaced the old one, which has a larger capacity. The gully wagon's still working around its routes and picking up any complaints, and it's recently been in Greenhead, Gilsland and Holtwhistle. The hedges are still ongoing, clearing ditches, widening roads in area being looked at the present time around Dunkley Wood. There's also been a Hinshaw and Whittenstall. The dedicated drainage team is also repairing issues we have identified from the inspector's latest reports. And we've completed jobs around Longbyre with a new system and up-and-coming sites around Hexham, Moonfield and St Paul's in front of the shops. We have recently employed a new senior construction team leader in the Tynedale area who is going to be lead on all the drainage issues that we've got and be looking after the local safety schemes and the member schemes. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to contact him because he's isolating due to COVID. On the LTP and Highway Investment Programme, we've got 28 LTP and Highway Investment schemes to complete with the extra funding we'll have to date. We have currently done 17 of these to date, and to name a couple is just we've done the C268 at Esper Shields, we've done Hartbank Pridder, we've done the C261 Chullerton to Walk Bridge, and we've completed Edgewell Road in Pridder. We've just completed last week at Oakpool, which is a little single track road, which proved to have a few issues. This last week on the LTP, we started 3 schemes on the A68. The first one being at Old Town Crossroads, which is now complete, except for the road marking. We've just completed today the resurfacing at Cold Crag Reservoir, except for the road marking, and tomorrow we're starting at Errington to do that resurfacing. We've also started this week resurfacing on the C199 at Charlton to Ryden. We've got a couple of patches there to do, and next week we are going on a C198 Lanehead to Greenhalgh. Also next week we're starting the civils work on the B6321 round. This is Corbridge, where the level crossing is to the roundabout, which we're going to resurface, and we'll be slowly sealing the footpath right from Corbridge roundabout in front of the cemetery to about 300 yards past the level crossing. We've also been carrying out slurry seal repairs in Acomb and Barden Mill and Haltwhistle, and we're currently doing some in Corbridge now, out opposite the Angel. As I said, I haven't been able to get in touch with Chris, who was obviously isolating, about the member schemes and where we are with them up to date, but if anybody's got any questions about them, I'll see what answers I can find. And that's where we stand at the minute.
Okay, thanks very much, Andy. Andy, obviously the weather's going to change shortly. I mean, how long are we expecting to be keep going with resurfacing?
Well, we'll go with the resurfacing. It's not too bad with it being a hot material, but we'll go as long as we can. Obviously, if we've got snow on the ground or heavy rain, we can. But sometimes in the winters, it might be the best time to lay it when it's cold and dry.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's salt on the road, of course. But the surfacing generally goes round all year round. The slurry sealing will be coming to an end in end October, anyway, in October I would say, because then it just gets far too cold and stuff doesn't work. Yeah. Obviously, we've just completed the surface dressing as well for this year. But that's about as far as we'll know at the minute.
Fantastic, thanks very much.
Thank you. Just a quick question about block drains, really, if you wouldn't mind. We're having a Hexameter State walkabout in a couple of weeks' time. I'm sure David will confirm for me, it's always an issue when we do the estate walkabouts, the number of block drains we have. And a particular issue at the moment on Corbridge Road. And of course, as soon as the drains are blocked, as soon as we get any rainfall, heavy standing water across Corbridge Road, and it becomes quite an issue. And I have to say, I don't mean to be critical at all of Andy and Glenn, because, whenever I ask them to do something, they do their very best to go out and get it done. But I did write to Rick O'Farrell some months ago and say, we just haven't got enough gully cleaners. We can't unblock all of the drains, and we really missed a trick last week because, I wrote and I said, we've got the Tour of Britain coming through, we've told people along Corbridge Road not to park on the main road in advance of the race coming through. Here's an excellent opportunity to get along there, get those drains done while there aren't, cars parked across them. And I mean, it was out, but it wasn't out that particular day, so we missed that opportunity. And, I don't think it's them just not wanting to do it, Paul. I think we haven't got enough machinery to be able to meet the demand. So while you're looking at the budget coming up, is there any chance at all in the capital programme of another gully cleaner for the West?
So I think we do accept there's an issue with gullies, and we are in the process of replacing the 4 existing gully tankers for larger vehicles that have a wider versatility as well, in terms of they've got jetting equipment on, so they'll be able to do more like single pass unblocking drains that are blocked. We are going to be reviewing and looking at the gully service generally, because there's a lot of work already ongoing with the team in relation to that. I think fundamentally what we need to do is to do some additional kind of background investigation work in terms of the run rate, the extent of the run rate, how that's panning, because some of the key issues we have are to do with just the distance to the actual disposal points and the changes that have happened legislatively in terms of the amount of kind of running we're doing as opposed to working as well. So there's a whole host of issues that need to be considered. So we're intent to do that in this financial year, to enable us to then put forward, robust bids that are evidence-based, that can really demonstrate if is there a need for additional tankers to achieve the standards that we want to achieve, and if that's the case, we'll have then a robust evidence base to take that forward as a bid for additional funding. But it is the revenue cost as well that's a key issue, not just the cost of purchase.
Thanks for that, Paul. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. Kath's stolen my thunder. I was going to talk about gullies as well. I mean, it's something we raised in the Communities in Place Scrutiny Committee, and thank you very much for your response on that, Paul. And it's great to hear that the new wagons have got better kit and more capacity, so that'll hopefully make a difference, and then there'll be a further difference once you've done that extra work. So that's great. So and really the only other thing was just to say thank you very much for the you know, great that the Dilston Crossing is getting done next week, and and Main Street is being done now, which is wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you're happy that outside the Angel's been done as well, but that's another story. Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it is my portfolio as well, but, you know, I do think we have got a great programme of road improvements and whatnot, but it doesn't come without cost, and I don't just mean financial cost, because, you know, at the moment, it doesn't matter where you go in my area, there's roads closed, and it has been causing some mayhem. I think another year, I think we'll have to look at it a bit closer and maybe space some of these out a bit more. You know, in my particular area, there's probably 4 or 5 around Bellingham area closed at the moment, and you know, for strangers it causes a real hassle. Delivery people with wagons and whatnot, it's a real problem. The other sort of niggle that I've got about it was the A68 one, particularly the one that's been near Colwell, the Cold Crag one, because there's been problems with the school bus, but again, last night the road wasn't open. I think it was last night or the night before, wasn't open at 5 o'clock when it was supposed to be. It was 5:20 before it was opened again. I had one wagon driver particularly annoyed because he was almost up on his hours for driving. And, you know, but if we say it's going to be open, it has to be open. The previous week, they overran by 2 hours on the A68 at night. Again, that caused some real problems. So, you know, I just think we're very appreciative of what we have got done, but let's just be mindful that, you know, when we have times, we should definitely stick to them.
I know last week on Old Town Crossroads we had delivery issues, and obviously we had the road dug out, and especially with the temperatures we had last week, the servicing wasn't going off, and we had tankers in there, water in it and everything. Last night was a bit different because the tar which had laid went in too deep, and that wouldn't go off. I mean, it did go off quicker than what we expected, and it was off about 5:20. But I've told the contractors who work on the site that it just cannot happen, because it is with our main contractor, and it's not like NCC staff that's doing it. It's our main contractor, but obviously we are responsible for the works. And they're being told that it's got to be off at 5 no matter what. I was told to Paul Chip Chase, because it seems that some of the school transport as well does just seem to take it on themselves to go around. Don't stop and ask, because we do escort the school transport through the road closures. But some of them just see the road closure and just decide to go around the diversion without actually talking and stopping the people on the ends. But I've spoken to Paul Chip Chase, and he's going to get in touch with the tour operators.
I think there needs to be some better communication between the two parties, basically. I mean, you know, it was alleged to me that the Hayden Bridge bus was refused to be allowed to go through there one day this last week, and was sent back by Bellingham. Well, you know, it just doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't,
and, you know, whether that's true or whether it was exaggerated, I don't know. But, you know, I just think that we need to... We're all trying to do the right thing, and you know, they're our schools, you know, our roads. We need to get the job linked up.
Because usually when we book a road closure, Paul Chip Chase we already email Paul with them anyway and say, look, we're escorting them through. But if for some reason the traffic management's turning them away, I need to know that, you see, you know.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hutchinson.
Hi Andy, just a small thing. Great to see the roads being done. A lot of them have been done, but unfortunately when they come to put the white lines on, there's a lot of slows being missed. I was at a parish council meeting last night, and there's at Slaggyford,
right,
Kirkhoff Narsdale, and there's a slow missing beside the community hall. Right. There is a slow sign on the way towards it, but it's far too far back. There's no slow sign on the north side of Burnstone Bridge, which is a very sharp left-hand corner under the bridge, as I think you'll know. It's happening in a few places, and having to report this every time, sort of thing.
I have noticed, especially because this year it's come under my jurisdiction for the highways improvement funding. But I know because I was doing it last year as well, and I have noticed going through these schemes that there are a lot of white lines marks missed off. Because I know they've done it at Broomley as well, because they missed a giveaway off at Broomley. It hasn't been done, so we're going to have to go back through all the schemes that we've done and make an inventory of all the white lines and get them all done and what's missing. But obviously, I'll probably email you later on and get the full list of where it's missing, and then we'll start putting a programme together and get them all done.
That's great. It's remembering where they were in the first place.
Aye, yeah.
And it's quite often locals who are telling me.
I know the ones that, because we resurfaced at Allendale.
Oh, that's Collins.
Is it? We resurfaced to Allendale. I know that all the road markers haven't gone back down yet, because there's still a contentious issue about the rumble strips. Yeah. You know, and I've still got to find whether the people want them back on or not, because we've got nothing but grief off the residents there.
Well, yeah, but there's a serious issue there.
Oh.
In that we've got a school,
Yeah.
sports hall,
Mm-hmm.
a recreation ground where the kiddies go to
Yeah.
the village hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are one or two residents who are upset.
Yes.
Now, I would like to be able to remove them rumble strips,
Mm-hmm.
but only when we find something to replace them with.
Yes.
You can't put safety measures in place.
And
It's
then
been there for a couple of years and remove them. Because if there's an accident, who the hell is going to be responsible? You've taken your safety measures out.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to see there, if it's possible, is the rumble strip that's causing the concern, the one closest to Dean Fields or Dean Lands, whichever it is. If it's possible to actually move it a little bit closer to the school. Because the rumble strips that were outside the village hall, or the ones close to the village hall, they were causing a great deal of problem. People went a bit about the noise, but it was the ones that was close to the estate. But nothing could be done until the bike race went through on Friday. So if you give us a buzz or an email next few days, we'll discuss it.
And discuss it. Aye.
Yeah.
No bother. Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Go on.
had reported earlier on, I don't know if it's happened, the top of Park Road, there was white lines missing at the junction, the very top, which is a cul-de-sac.
Right.
The white line was missing from the junction bit, and the slow sign coming from the Military Road down into Park Road, just on the corner.
Right.
That slow sign was missing. I did report that. I don't know if it's happened yet, though.
Right.
Thank you.
No bother.
Thank you. Councillor Dale.
It's a nightmare. It has been absolutely dreadful. I mean, Northern Park have been in since, I can't remember. They've been going backwards and forwards through the village. They've been along the A695. They've been going through Stocksfield. And then we have Colas, and that's all gone upside down. We've also got Comex coming back again because of the actual full fibre that was put in along the A695. In some areas, it's not deep enough. So they've been coming through. I've got everybody. I've got NWL, electricity, just goes on and on and on. And the A695 is a bit like a patchwork quilt.
It is, yeah.
But I think what I'd like to say is I feel very sorry for you because actually it's stopping work being done. But the biggest issue we've got is also the wagon damage that's been coming from all the hard rock, etc., has been taken out of the road from the A69 roundabout. It's been going through Broomley.
Yes.
It's been going through the top end. It's been going through Whittenstall. The roads are appalling. And I know you keep on having to do them as well. But what annoys me is actually you're having to pay for it because you don't get anything from the Department of Transport, although it is one of their it's their it comes out of their account. But what I was going to say is, can you find from the utilities if they can inform councillors when they're actually going to be working? Because we don't. Northern Power keep on sending me consultations saying, "Are we wonderful?" I keep on saying, "No, I don't give them 1 point," and they never email, they never do anything. And they actually are not very easy to work with, the residents either.
I'd probably have to coordinate that with street work because we don't know what they're doing either. Street works would, but when they're working on the road, because everybody's got to book that road works in, you see.
Yeah.
But we're not really privy on what's going on in the areas. I mean, you can get the one network where you can see all the roadworks that's coming on in your area.
They seem to pop up where they're not meant to be as well. But
Right,
never
I know.
mind. It's just to bring that up. The other one is for John as well. Is it's a lot of road signage. A lot of us have spent a lot of money putting 20-mile-an-hour signs down and everything else. They're hardly lasting.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got some that are a year old and they're coming off.
Right.
So it's actually it seems an awful waste of money if they're only going to last that amount
I'll
of
have
time.
to see, because if that's happening, I don't know if the inspectors is
Yes,
highlighting that or
I said I would
reporting
do a trip round and actually have a look and see where they are and come back to you. But that's something that needs to be taken up because, we're paying all this money out of our own scheme funding. As far as the gullies are concerned, I've gone on for years. I can't remember when I haven't been speaking about getting a second gully cleaner for the Hexham area, Tynedale area. The biggest thing is that if we don't get the gullies cleaned, and I've got a lot of gullies which are actually underneath, as Paul, as you said, they're actually broken because they're so old, because they're on the A695 as well, and the amount of damage they get from the very heavy transport they take. So the gullies are actually broken underneath as well, so the water doesn't sit. It was on Sports, I got it on Sky on Friday, so I sent a copy to everybody saying, I've got proof on Sky now. Came up last night as well. Big pond never went away, so they had somebody there, and I think they were actually not throwing it out with spoons, but near that. So we do need another gully cleaner, but also we need to have a look at some of these gullies that are actually fractured and are no longer of any good once it starts, the downpours come down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, John, if you can take that up as well, because that's something, that is actual capital. And I think once they start having to spend capital, obviously, the revenue, they don't like spending the revenue because they're short of revenue as well. But I mean, if the gullies get blocked, we get water, then we get ice, then we get potholes, and it just goes round and round. So maybe, John, you can take all that on board?
I'll ask Paul to respond, but I think we've got an extra gully sucker in the bid, haven't we? Or we've just taken delivery of one. What is it, Paul?
That's the new replacement vehicles that we're taking that have larger capacity, so they'll be able to cover more ground, basically, with that additional jetting. But like I said earlier, we are looking at the gully service to see what else we can do with that going forward once these additional vehicles are in as well.
I think the big thing is some areas have got no trees. I've got trees, I've got hills, I've got the lot, and all the water comes down. So we all have different areas, and we all have different problems. But if you want, John, you can come and have a look at my area and problems, and you can stay all day. I'll give you lunch because it's that bad. And it's not the men's fault because you're doing everything you can. It's actually the whole big terrain and everything.
Thank you very much. Any more questions for Andy? No, thanks very much, Andy. Very kind of you to turn up today because the other chap's on an extended holiday, as always. And apparently it's not football this time. Right, sorry to make you wait, David, but...
Sorry, put that on. Our grass cutting this season is on target for the required numbers of cuts. I think across some areas of the county it's been some quite challenging growing conditions, and we've had a bit of that, but actually it's been a pretty reasonable season for us. It hasn't been too wet for us, although at times we've had wet and warm conditions and the grass has grown vigorously. But I think standards have been decent, and the frequency of cuts is where we need it to be. So those activities will be coming to a halt generally mid-October, but if it remains warm and the grass is still growing, we might have to continue a little after that. But from mid-October, we're looking to move into our winter grounds maintenance, which predominantly for us is cutting back of council-owned hedges and shrubbery. We do get a lot, which will go through to Andy's side of privately owned hedges and what have you overhanging the highway, which is dealt with slightly differently, where the highway inspector will contact those property owners and get them to cut that back, giving them 28 days notice. But we've got plenty of hedges and shrubbery that are the county council responsibility, and we'll be moving on to the maintenance of those primarily through the winter. So we've got our schedules there, but you know, any particular areas of concern that members have, let us know and we'll prioritise them. Just on the weed spray trial, as I think I mentioned last time, we're trialling some different products to control weed growth on the pavements, and that's a trial that's happening county-wide, not just in the Tynedale area. So a report on the results of that trial will be produced around November, and councillors will that'll be shared with members at that point. So on the street cleansing side of things, working through our normal schedules at the moment, interrupted by a lot of work for the Tour of Britain route. Did a lot of sweeping up the A695 for that. And so working in conjunction with highways, and I think that was well received and successful. And we'll be moving on to leaf hotspots soon. I've already had one or two correspondences on that for a few areas for leaf removal. Again, we know where all our leaf hotspots are, but if there's concerns being raised by members of the public via yourselves, just let us know and we'll try and prioritise those. Just on the street cleansing side, we've got 3 mobile pickups that go around, litter picking, emptying litter bins, what have you. We've just taken delivery of a new pickup for one of those 3 routes that covers everywhere from Wylam up to Bellingham and back down to Hexham. It's got some increased capacity, which will help. It's got smaller mesh as well, which we've had complaints before of litter blowing out of the back of those as they're going along, and a cover for where the wheelie bin tips in. So just a much improved vehicle for that purpose. So that's been good news, very welcome by the guy that works on that route. Winter waste services, sorry. Other than the normal sort of vehicle breakdowns, staffing shortage, COVID restrictions, etc., I think we've been able to keep on top of residual recycling and garden waste collection services. Having said that, I have got an alert on at the moment for some collections that were missed in the Charlton area, and that's as a result of the road closures from the highway resurfacing. So there's an alert on the website to let residents know about that, but we'll get back there as soon as we can gain access. Sort of on the income side on refuse, we have taken a bit of a hit on the commercial waste. I think again that's COVID related, with businesses being closed, hospitality businesses, tourist businesses and what have you. So we've taken a bit of a hit on that. Hopefully that will recover. On things like the bulky waste service and the garden waste service, we've exceeded income targets on those. And perhaps that's also a result of COVID, more people spending time at home, doing their gardens, doing DIY, getting rid of rubbish, spring cleaning. So there's been quite a notable increase in demand on the bulky collection service. And we've covered that basically with overtime of the existing team who do that operation. The bottle recycling facilities continue to receive increased collections. That doesn't seem to have let up as well, the speed at which they're filling up. And domestic waste tonnages remain higher than normal as well. And again, I think that's all sort of impacts of changed behaviours, people at home more, all that sort of thing. It's all these knock-on effects of what we've all been experiencing. So just finish off, just to mention that verge cutting was completed within the target period of June and July. And just on the sort of bulky waste service and the COVID impacts, there are still a few aspects of services that aren't entirely back to normal. One of which was the assisted bulky waste collection services, where we're actually sending operatives into people's houses. But that's being reviewed at the moment with a view to reinstating that service. So that's me.
Thanks for that, David. I won't, of course, say anything about that my bin wasn't picked up last week. Shocking. But I won't say that, so we're all right. It was only recycled. It was only half full. I don't really care. Tanner's Row in Hexham, down by Cockshire. Do you know it?
Yes.
At the back of there, in between the houses at Elandsville and the Tanner's Road down the bottom, there's a patch of land in there. Are you able, or do you know who it is that's able to find out who owns that land? Because it's overgrown, and it could. We've just had a new wall put at the back of Tanner's Road, and I don't know whether it's going to push onto that. Nobody seems to know who the land ownership is.
Yeah, I know that it's not NCC, but we've asked Sam Talbot to go through the land registry and see if we can find out who does own that.
I think our chaps did a little bit of work on it a few years ago as a favour, basically, really. But nobody's yet to find out whose land it is yet. Any questions, Councillor Riddle?
Yeah, just a comment really, David, and just to say, can we be proactive in actually send letters out to private landowners about hedges and trees that's overhanging the carriageways, please? Because, you know, it's not just an issue for wagons and mirrors and things which are very expensive and, you know, they pay a lot of road tax, but also road safety for sightlines and things. You know, we cut the verges back, but the hedges and trees and shrubs and, you know, scrub are really getting in some places to encroach right to the edge of the roads. And I think, you know, both county-wide, but also privately, we need to be pressing private owners of both gardens and farmland to get them cut back. And I would like to see that done proactively rather than reactively.
Yeah, well, I agree. I must admit that slightly falls outside of my remit in that highways send those letters out based on the highway inspectors. But I know, as far as I'm aware, Andy will probably confirm that that is done proactively, and that the highway inspectors are identifying these areas. There's an element of both. Obviously, we get reports in where there are problems, but I think the highway inspectors are good at identifying those areas as well.
Councillor Horncastle?
Yes, very, very quickly. Just want a big thank you to David and his team. There was some nasty fly tipping in the Allendale area happened early on a Sunday morning, and early on the Monday morning, David's team had it cleared up, and everybody in the vicinity was seriously impressed.
That's fantastic news. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it must be some sort of record. Only a couple of questions, but thanks very much. You obviously covered everything comprehensively in your report. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So, just asked to do a quick update on progress with the implementation of the local transport plan for the current year, and also just a prep for the coming financial year. So you'll see from within the report, in terms of the key issues, we basically did set and consult on a programme that was just over £19 million. We did that on the basis that we weren't at that point in time advised from DFT as to what the allocation had been given to the county. So we wanted to do that on a prudent basis based on where previous years' allocations had been set, because fundamentally we didn't want to consult and then have to draw schemes back out of that process if the funding was actually lower than what had been envisaged. Thankfully, as you can see from the report, we actually received a greater allocation than what we'd budgeted for. So what we did was very quickly look at those reserve schemes that had been put towards a programme but not actually in the programme, brought those in,
extended some of the existing schemes as well to get the maximum return on those. So the overall programme itself that was set for the current financial year is just over £25 million. So it is a very significant programme. You'll also see from within the report that the County Council has allocated a further £15 million from its own capital reserves in terms of an extended maintenance programme for UNC roads and footways and cycleways. And in the current year, that's a £5 million allocation. So again, a really welcome additional investment to support that overall programme of improved maintenance to the network. You'll see from within the report, we've tried to give a bit of a county-wide flavour as some of the activity that's been undertaken. And what I intend to do is give you a more detailed verbal update in terms of what's been happening in your patch. But we felt it was important because we're going around all of the local area council meetings just to highlight both the scale, the range and the complexity of the work that's been undertaken by the highways team across the county. So you'll see from within the report that we are undertaking the whole host of usual maintenance works, resurfacing works that you would expect and safety schemes, but also some fairly significant works to structures. We are effectively dismantling in its entirety, conserving, repairing and putting back up a 200-year-old suspension bridge over the River Tweed up in Berwick. We've done a whole host of works down the A189 Spine Road, looking at the bridge maintenance works along there and the works on the steel bridges that we've got additional DFT funding for us about to kick off, and the repainting of those across the county. There's also some significant work undertaken on landslips, and we've been doing some really complex geotechnical work down the Corcut Valley on a significant landslip area on there, and we expect that to come forward with a scheme in the next round of the LTP. So just to really give that flavour as to the breadth and scope of the activity. In terms of the Tynedale patch, you'll be aware that we provide a members' local improvement schemes update that gives a detailed quarterly update on where members' schemes are. We're looking to do the same for the LTP going forward, so we're pulling together much more detailed information on a scheme-by-scheme basis, so we'll be able to share that and have that given to yourselves rather than having to listen to me come along and read them out to you all the time. So we're looking to do that and hopefully get that in place for the next quarter's update. But certainly in terms of where we're at this point in time, on the integrated transport funding, there's 57 schemes that we're on with across the Tynedale area. 16 of those have now been completed in their entirety. So those include 4 school 20-mile-an-hour schemes. There's a 2-phase one at Nickley. The first phase has been undertaken. The second phase is works orders being issued. There's schemes at Bromley, Hagden, Haydenbridge, and Whittenstall, all gone in. There's been an extension to the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit and along the B6303 at Station Road, Catton to Allendale. And again, traffic calming at Garden House Bank in Acomb, and 2 route action schemes where there's been a range of measures undertaken on the A68 and the A696. There's also 8 works orders issued, so that includes another 2 of the 20-mile-an-hour schemes at schools. So that's at Whitfield Primary and also at Mickley to complete the works at Mickley First School. There's a traffic management scheme that's been issued for Wall Village, a safety scheme at Ratcliffe Road, Haydenbridge, and again another 4 route action schemes on the A68, one at Wheat Hill to Buckley, one at 4 Laws Shilltop to Middle Cowden, and then a couple on the A696 as well. We also have another 31 schemes that are at various stages of design. These include a further 6 school 20-mile-an-hour schemes. So that includes Barrowford First School, Ovingham First and Middle Schools, Newbrough, Otterburn Primary, Prudhoe High School at Moor Road, and also Highfield Middle and St Matthew's Primary at Highfield Lane in Prudhoe. So, we're really trying to get to grips and get through as many of those 20-mile-an-hour schemes as we can. And there's a further 2 schemes to be programmed that are on hold within that integrated transport funding. On the maintenance side, you've already heard from Andy some of the works that have been undertaken, but just to give that overview, there's 47 projects in play. There's 27 that have been completed. That includes all of the 12 surface dressing schemes. We've done 2 of the microsurfacing schemes, one at Biverfield Road in Prudhoe, another one at Eastwood Grange and Dockland Close in Hexham. There's 13 of the structural maintenance and resurfacing schemes that have been completed. That includes some fairly large schemes along the A68, that come to the pair of them over £300,000, so significant, pieces of work along there, and a whole host of activity on the UNC Road network, which includes the works that Andy's mentioned at Hagbank, Cemetery Road at Hayden Bridge, Edgewell Road in Prudder, Falston to Lane Head and at Greenrig as well. There's a raft of works that have had the works orders issued, and again, I think Andy's covered most of those, so I won't touch on those, but there's also 3 that are in design. There's work in design to upgrade the B6320 Bellingham to Hareshaw Junction, the B6395 at West Road and Beaumont Terrace in Prudder, which is a phase 2 activity, and the B6309 at Hindley to Appley Dean. So you can see from that there's an absolute raft of activity still ongoing and still to be done. There's 6 schemes still being programmed. We have had an issue with 3 where we're pending some legal issues, and that's around way leave agreements to gain access where required. We have had to defer 1 scheme until next year, which was a microsurfacing scheme, just because we're out of the weather window on that, and that was a scheme at Iverson Road in Hexham that we'll pick up in the next season when we're able to do that. So in terms of the actual LTP and going forward for the next financial year, where we're at with that is that the letters have gone out to members and town and parish councils seeking the priorities. I think it's the 8th of October. Just check the date. Yeah, 8th of October is the deadline for submissions of that. We'll then go through the usual process of assessing those, prioritising them and ranking them. There'll be an LTP members workshop where we'll basically present the findings and seek members' views on the relative priorities within the Tynedale area for the schemes that have come forward. We'll then discuss and have further dialogue with the portfolio holder, Councillor Riddle, regarding the draft programme, and that draft programme comes back to the local area council normally in February before it's then finalised and set as part of the budget setting process in March, so we can get cracking and get them implemented from that point onwards. So that's where we're at to date. We will be just setting the actual value of that programme based on previous allocations. Again, if we're fortunate, we'll bump that up and take on reserve schemes where possible.
Thanks very much for that, Paul. Comprehensive as always, and obviously extra money is always welcome. So extra money means we get a better chance of getting stuff done in our area. And let's be honest, that's what all councils are after. You mentioned that updates, and I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in one of the meetings we had last year, Councillor Gibson pushed for this quite a bit. So I'm pleased they're coming in, because everybody, I think, has always sort of wanted that, so that's excellent. Anybody, Councillor Horncastle?
Thanks, Trevor. Paul, I don't understand about these 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in villages that have schools. I mean, this went through, these were passed in planning donkeys years ago, and bit by bit, they're slowly getting introduced. We had one in Allendale was introduced probably 2 or 3 years ago. However, I've been trying to chase the one in Slaley. Slaley's got a first school, and I was led to believe it was going to happen imminently, and it never happened. So, relentlessly emailing Neil Snowden and Robin McCartney, I eventually get an email back from him last week saying, "Hi Colin, the 20-mile-an-hour for Slaley is part of this year's LTP. And yet when I look at your document here where it's got traffic management, where the bit outside schools, it mentions a number of schools but doesn't mention Slaley. So is that just an example of a few areas, or are they the specifics? Because Slaley isn't on the list, and I've got an email from Neil saying it's in this year's LTP. And he's even suggested the very sorts of flashing lights we should be putting in.
I'll look through.
And I've just forwarded you the email when you're sitting there.
I'll look through my list and I'll come back to you at the end if you don't mind. It's a very big long list and I can't find it.
Well, I'll forward you the email anyway from Neil.
But certainly, in terms of just the time scale for 20-mile-an-hour schemes, it's been a 5-year programme that clearly where you're getting new developments at schools, and we've heard one earlier on in the meeting today. The traffic measures are reviewed as part of that, but for a lot of schools, 20-mile-an-hour schemes are new, and they are new to them, and that's a commitment that the County Council gave to look at where appropriate to improve the safety measures within schools across the piece. So we're on, going that. This hopefully should be the final year to get them all wrapped up. But they are quite an involved process. They do take a while to go through, and we have had to, I think, roll back on some of them in terms of where people, as part of that consultation, have wanted to extend the area that's affected by the 20-mile-an-hour into residential areas alongside, and we have rolled back on some of that to really try and focus it in on, you know, the key issue, which is primarily the key area around the school itself. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Chair, can I just say that it is one of my priorities, Colin, that we complete that programme this year where possible. That's the caveat. It's it's in my priorities.
It just seems to have taken forever.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Paul. Any other questions? No.
Can I just say about the 20 mile an hour? Because I agree with you, Paul. I mean, I had one that was extended. What I want is children to walk to school, right? And therefore, if you're on the A695 or on the main road, Sladey's busy, is actually making sure that actually the length where the crossings cross over, you know, isn't within the 20 mile an hour. So I know I had mine extended, and actually it was right to do that. So, you know, we should be looking more broader to say, not just in front of the school, we want children to walk to school rather than them getting into the car and being taken to school. So, you know, it's... Anyway, I'm glad Mickley's there. Glad to finish, nearly.
Right, thanks again, Paul. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 17, which is basically, we looked at it last time and appointed people to certain organisations. I'm pleased to say Councillor Scott took up the Product Community Partnership, Councillor Riddle, Reed Tyne and Coquet Sports Centre, Councillor Waddell, the Tyne Valley Community Rail Partnership Board. We still have a vacancy in the Hull Whistle Partnership Limited, so if anybody is interested in that, if you just let Nicola know, I think that'd be the appropriate way. Otherwise,
Chair, they are very keen to have another councillor sort of as a member. I have had emails and telephone messages left from me whilst I've been on leave. They are very keen to have another councillor representative.
okay. Well, it's there anyway, so if anybody wants to take it up, please let...
It's the Holt Whistle Partnership Board.
That's what I said, didn't I?
Sorry, just Councillor Deal was asking.
Oh, right, sorry, I beg your pardon. Okay, right, then we're moving on to 18, which is to note the latest version of the local area council work programme. As always, if anybody has something they want me to bring up or take to the local area chairs meeting, which then gets it put onto the LACs, then let me know. I mean, have you got one now, Councillor?
Yes, I do. I just think it would be good to have an update from the ambulance service, please.
You want someone at the LAC from the ambulance service?
I think so, because we haven't had one for quite a long time, and it's changing, and the army are in at the present time delivering part of it, and I think it would be quite good to hear how it's all working. Thank you.
No worries. Anybody else? Okay, well, you don't have to do it here. You can get in touch with me anytime, and I'll see what I can put forward. Sorry?
I was just going to report that I have had confirmation that the Police Crime Commissioner will attend our meeting, but unfortunately it's not going to be until May next year, just due to obviously their availability in our meeting dates.
Well, I mean, that's fine. If that's when they're available, that's when they're available, so that's not a problem. I'm sure it'll come up. We're going to other area councils as well, I believe, so that's not a problem. Right then, nearly there, date of next meeting. Right, the date of the next meeting is Tuesday the 12th of October at 4 p.m. Do we have any update on... no. So, our Councillor Sharp's not here anyways. So, yeah, we'll let you know, as always, nearer the time where it's going to be at, because, quite frankly, it's a changeable scene, you know. You have your regulations you have to go to, and if they can't allow us to have it back in the normal place, then they can't allow us to have it there. Right, then, final item 20. Do we have any... urgent business, Nicola? No? Well, thanks very much. That's nearly 4 hours. Thank you very much for your patience. Can I also say thank you very much for Nicola, because while we're sitting here listening or whatever, she sits there non-stop for 4 hours, writing away, going through pencil after pencil. So, thanks very much on our behalf, every one of us.